Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the What If Guy, back with another fanfiction. This is the movie of What If Issei Demon God. Now before starting, please give this video a like, and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Kurumi watched with interest as Mickey's heartbeat and breathing became stable again. The pregnant human let out a comfortable sigh as she laid back down on her bed. Thank you Kurumi, I feel much better now. Mickey thanked as she quickly fell asleep. Kurumi nodded before turning to Goro. By the way Mr. Hayaudu, have you already decided on the name yet of the child? Kurumi asked out of curiosity as Goro shook his head. No, not really. I was too worried with my wife being sick that I haven't given much thought yet, Goro replied. Kurumi nodded as she grabbed her bag and headed her way out of the room. Well, if you can't come up with a name, the name of the person who gave me this medicine was Issei, just a small idea that you might want to think about, Kurumi informed before stepping out the room and leaving the house. Finally, after all these years, Master Issei will finally return to me, Kurumi thought before disappearing in the afternoon as the seeds of chaos just had been planted. A young boy named Issei Hayaudu was on his date with Yuma Amano, a strange girl he just recently met, to ask him on a date and become his boyfriend. Issei, who was a hopeless, accepted the offer without a second to waste, and guess what? It got his ing killed. Now laying on his back in a puddle of his own, Issei was looking at the orange sky as the life was fading out of his eyes. Am I really going to die like this? I just wanted to touch some, as Issei hopelessly thought, as he didn't have the strength in his body to even move. Only if I was stronger and smarter I could have gotten myself a nice girlfriend. What a fool I was. His thoughts kept on rambling until his eyes slowly started close forever. I just wanted to become someone better than myself. With that final thought, Issei laid there dead. No sign of life as the body kept on leaking on the cold floor. But suddenly a shift occurred in the air which made all the crows fly away and started shrieking as the that was pouring out of Issei's body slowly disappeared as the hole in his gut that he received from his date started to close up. His brown hair grew a few shades darker as suddenly a twitch of his finger appeared. Slowly Issei opened his eyes as the dark brown eyes were replaced by a soul-piercing crimson pair along with a vertical slit like a cat's or a dragon's. Pushing his body of the hard floor, Issei stood back up on his legs as he kept on blinking for a couple of times as the young man grasped his hair and body and clenched them tightly. His face was that of shock which soon turned into one of a twisted ecstasy. Issei maniacal laughter roared through the park as the orange sky was becoming darker and darker by the moment as the moon weakly shined at the young man standing in the middle of the park. Finally, I'm back in human flesh, Issei exclaimed with sadistic joy as he looked at the fountain before jumping on the tip and aiming his body at the moon. I never have been so excited. Where are the humans? The woman Issei jumped down and twirled around with glee. It will be a calamity. A calamity just have been reborn. Issei Hayaudu, the physical manifestation of a calamity, stood back on his feet after more than thousands of years sealed away on a fountain in the park where he just had been reborn. It will be a calamity, Issei said happily to himself as he spread his arms and took a deep inhale of fresh air. So many humans running amongst each other like maggots. There are even bats and crows nearby. They would make a great meal to celebrate my official return. Issei laughed to the sky as he jumped down from the fountain top before looking at the place where the boy that he took the body over just died. Being a bit interested in what happened, Issei looked through the boy's entire life in a few seconds before his face turned into one of disgust. Dear Kami, that brat was utterly pathetic. But hey, it was because of his foolishness I finally came back. So there was a plus side to him, I guess, Issei said to himself before recalling something from the memories. Taking out the piece of paper the other Issei received right before the date, Issei looked at the symbol of the paper. A summoning circle, isn't that from Runa's family? Issei asked himself before shrugging before shoving the paper back into his pocket. And what to do? Kill some humans? No, that's boring. That crow that killed the brat, I must thank her for her service. In a flash, Issei seemed to completely disappear in the night, ready to create a massacre. Inside of the abandoned church, Rainer has just arrived after killing her date and was ready to report. Entering the building, her fellow companions were all waiting for her. Took you a while, Rainer. Finally killed the boy, the blue-haired fallen angel that looked as she just was done with her shift in the Soplins? Asked the black-haired fallen angel, who scoffed. Of course, that boy was too easy to lure and now his corpse are feeding the crows. Rainer replied with a smug tone as her allies nodded but all froze as a sudden wave of malice ran through them as a voice spoke to them. I think you have it from my dear Yuma. It will be the crows' corpses that will be feeding me. All fallen angels turned to the altar within the church and saw Issei sitting legs crossed with an arrogant grin on his face. How are you alive? Rainer asked confused as she created a light spear and readied herself to throw it. When you kill someone, make sure that they stay dead. But that tip will be useless since all of you are gonna die right here, Issei exclaimed before jumping off the altar and slowly walking over to the terrified murder of crows who all readied their light spears. They each threw it and making Issei grin as without even stopping his walk. The light spears all shattered the moment they reached him, which made them all shocked to their core. What all the fallen angels uttered in disbelief as Issei just smirked before disappearing. Though the only male of the group was first as Issei grabbed him by the throat and swung him across the entire church. The speed Issei moved was undetectable by any of the fallen angels, as the male fallen angel was suspended in the air before Issei came behind him and ripped his head off his body before landing back on the ground with the fallen angel's head in his hand. The body of the fallen still flew across the church and eventually crashed into some dusty furniture. "Sorry, but I'm not into guys," Issei casually informed before his hand seemed to completely absorb the head of the dead fallen angel before he turned around and faced the 3 frightened girls who all decided to make a run for it. But before they could even take a step, splattered all over the ground as both Rainier and Calawarna turned back around and saw their blonde companion middled head flying in the air while her body was torn to literal shreds as only and bits of her were still visible. "Sorry for that, but I can't stand those bragging little girls that have a stick up their ass. Now seeing that these 2 are dead now, what do with you 2?" Issei asked with a sinister smile before slowly walking towards them. The sheer malice of Issei's presence prevented both from escaping as both just fell on their knees with their head low to the ground desperately begging for mercy. "PP please Issei, please spare me, I'll do anything I let you have with my body, just please don't kill me," Rainier begged as Issei stood now in front of them. Calawarna didn't say anything. Her body refused to move without being told by the literal demon in front of them. Issei looked in between the pair, his crimson eyes looking at them for a moment before thinking. "And both have a nice body. I think I keep one as a pet, let's see," Issei thought before grinning. "I see, then raise your head, Rainier." Rainier obeyed as she sat back up and looked Issei in the eyes. Issei slowly walked over and leaned down. Issei brought his face forwards as Rainier recognized what he was planning to do. Having no choice but to accept, Rainier brought her face closer to his and started ing him. They started ing for a moment before Issei lifted Rainier back up her feet and wrapping his arms around her body. Rainier added Issei's touch but soon felt something off. Slowly Issei's eyes opened as his mouth revealed a bunch of her razor-sharp teeth as his face and mouth expanded to an inhumane degree before Issei literally bit into Rainier's face. Rainier tried to scream while struggling into Issei's grasp, but the young man didn't let go as Rainier helplessly struggled in Issei's arms before Issei bit through her skull, which ended her life. Calawarna didn't dare to look up and just felt that splattered out of Rainier's body fall onto her hair and floor. Her body kept shaking as breathing became harder for her. Slowly Issei ate Rainier's body, completely leaving nothing apart from behind. Issei's face returned back to normal as Issei let out a burp as a black feather came out of his mouth. "Damn, I forgot eating birds and crows raw leaves feathers in my mouth. Should have Kurumi cooked you first," Issei said before tossing the feather away and looked down at the last fallen angel. Issei raised an eyebrow as Calawarna kept on shaking in fear. Crouching down, Issei pulled her up by the hair and smirked at her horrifying face. "Aren't you gonna beg for your life?" Calawarna fearfully shook her head as she answered with tears rolling down her face. "I won't, that would be pointless," she replied, making Issei laugh. "Ahaha, indeed, that would be indeed pointless. Those that beg for mercy after a battle are the ones that disgust me the most. Yuma, or whatever her name was, had it coming after looking down at me first when I wasn't in control of my body. Such maggots irritates me the most. But you accepted your inferiority and you're waiting for a quick and painless death, aren't you?" Issei asked, making Calawarna slowly nod her head. Yes, Calawarna accepted her fate and closed her eyes, hoping that it will be over soon. "While killing you would be a waste," Issei honestly replied before standing up, which forced Calawarna to stand back up as well. Issei looked at her with a grin. "I made up my mind. I think I'll keep you as my pet," Issei stated, shocking. Calawarna didn't believe what she was hearing, but knowing that this might be her only chance to survive, she accepted her new role. "I understand, Master Issei," Calawarna submissively replied, making Issei smile. "And a fast learner too. You will do well under me. I don't know where Kurumi is off to, most likely pulling the strings behind the scene and being the puppet master of my return. Now let's go. You'll be serving me from now on," Issei declared as he grasped Calawarna by her ass before vanishing in the church. Back to the Hayadu residence, Issei uncaringly walked inside of the building with Calawarna right behind him. Immediately his father noticed him. "Hey sport, how was your date?" Goro asked from the couch as he failed to notice Calawarna behind Issei. Issei walked in the living room as his mother wasn't present. "I had better," Issei casually replied before looking his father in the eyes as Goro's head suddenly exploded from his body, painting the walls with bits of flesh. "Hain disgrace of a sperm. I can't believe I have such pathetic descendants," Issei cursed to himself before placing his hand on Goro's decapitated body, which caused the body to turn into a light blue-colored gem before Issei ingested it in his own mouth. "Ugh, forgot how disgusting absorbing these monkeys are. Tastes like a cloth to wipe shit and vomit. Ain't disgusting." Right when Issei said that, his mother came out of her room and walked down the stairs. "Goro, what was that sound?" Mickey asked as she arrived down the stairs and looked horrified at her son and the strange woman with the walls covered in. Mickey was about to scream, but her body suddenly froze as Issei appeared before her and looked at his mother with disgust. "You're uglier than what my own mother used to look like. All shriveled up and gray like overdated flesh. Your body isn't worth absorbing, but your soul might be useful," Issei said before making his mother's body explode as the entire living room was painted with. But Issei wasn't bothered and just looked at the small glowing white sphere in his hand. Issei grabbed the sphere and put it in his mouth before swallowing. "I forgot that souls taste like a cloud," Issei said as he looked back at Calawarna. Clean all of this up while I'm gonna take a bath, so don't bother me. When you're done, make some dinner for me. Human good or human flesh, it don't matter. Just make something that you think will taste good. But if you fail to satisfy me, you'll become my next meal," Issei warned before heading upstairs, leaving a scared Calawarna, who quickly started cleaning up the house. Inside of a dark and ominous room, the three leaders of the old Satan faction, along with Ryzdam, Liv, and Lucifer, and Euclid Lucifuge, were all present, as Kurumi Tojo was in the room as well, while projecting a map of Japan that showed all different kind of locations. All of these are the locations of the shrines that keep one of the corpse parts and artifacts of the King of Calamity. If you desire to retake the underworld or gain more power for yourself, the corpse part that I found with Kateria almost 2 decades ago has already been used by a test subject that is currently running wild in Kyoto. Now this is your chance to obtain the parts for yourselves and retake the underworld," Kurumi informed, as all the leaders nodded as they all decided to go hunting for the parts of Issei Hayao. "Now with those fools doing the dirty work, I can finally reunite with my master," Kurumi thought, as she recently had sensed her master's return in the human world. "So how is her chance to set things in motion? I can't wait to serve you again, my master." Laying inside of the bathtub of his home, Issei Hayao let out a comfortable sigh as the Yana's body drifted in the bathtub, while Issei looked at his new human body. "I'm barely at 1% of my total power. It appears that Kurumi didn't feed this body one of my parts. Odd. Then she must be carrying my part with her," Issei then mused as he laid back before wondering. "My body is fully human again, with my powers being at the bare minimum. I can't access my demonic energy or any of my abilities and techniques apart from Devour. I can't be reckless at the moment, and trying to regain it through eating others will take too much time. Then I guess I'll let Kurumi handle looking and finding for my other parts before giving them to me." Issei then stepped out of the tub before drying himself with a towel and inspecting himself in the mirror. And this body was lacking in every department. "Most certainly this thing," Issei said as he used what limited power he had to change his body a bit. He grew a few inches and his body became more refined with muscle. He gained a six-pack along with a good chunk of muscle like a pro swimmer's. He also made his nails sharper and turned them black, along with some strange black tattoos that spread on his back and arms. And lastly, little Issei also gained a growth spurt. After drying himself and taking a bathrobe from his father, Issei walked back down and saw that the entire living room has been cleaned up by his newest servant. Pleased, Issei walked over to the table and saw that there was variety in food that was ready for him. "Not bad," Issei complimented as he sat down and took a bite of some of the well-made rice and tempura. Calawarna walked back in the living room wearing an apron and placed a bottle of saju. "Here, master." Calawarna filled a cup with the saju before handing it to Issei, who accepted it and drank it in one gulp. "I'm good," Issei mused as he continued eating and drinking for a few minutes until his plate was empty. "Very good. It has been a while since I enjoyed some good human food. Almost forgot the taste of what regular food tastes like," Issei said out loud as Calawarna nodded. "It pleases me you enjoyed it." Calawarna let out a breath of relief. "It appears she will live another day. I can tell something on your mind. You are curious of who I am, right?" Issei knowingly asked as he stood up and sat down on the couch and gestured for Calawarna to follow him and sit next to him. Issei brought Calawarna's head on his lap and started playing with her hair like a cat. "I'm in a good mood right now, so ask me what you want to know." Calawarna gulped as she calmed her nerves. "Who are you exactly? From what our scouts told us, you were just a regular human that carried a sacred gear," Calawarna asked, hoping not to anger her master, who silently kept playing with her hair before looking up and letting out a sigh. "Well, I'm not lying of who I am. I'm Issei Hayao, but an Issei Hayao of the past. This body was previously in possession of the boy also named Issei Hayao, which was the brat Rainer killed. I'm simply the soul of the past Issei Hayao who took over the current Issei Hayao's body after his death," Issei explained as he looked down at Calawarna. She could see half of Issei's face change to that of the brown-eyed boy Rainer was sent to kill. "So the Issei Hayao that Rainer killed is still inside of you like a prisoner, or did he actually die?" Calawarna asked, making Issei shake his head. "Neither. He isn't dead, nor he is a prisoner. This will sound confusing to you since you most likely don't understand the concept of souls much. But in simpler terms, when the brat was born, I, who was just a small slither of a soul, manifested with the brat's soul. Over the years the brat lived his life. That little slither of my soul slowly fed on the brat's soul without anybody noticing. Slowly I started to regain my consciousness, but I didn't have the strength to take over the boy's body. But thanks to a miracle, which was Rainer, she not only killed the boy, but also broke his heart, which in turn greatly weakened his will. So using the chance while he was laying dead, I slowly started to devour the rest of his soul completely, thanks to him not having the will to fight anymore. This made me able to fully manifest my consciousness back and take over the boy's dead body. To be more precise, the brat was like sustenance that helped me be reborn, and now his soul is gone," Issei explained before letting out a long sigh. Calawarna started to understand, but that rose the obvious question. "But then who are you, Issei Hayao of the past?" Calawarna asked, making Issei look down again before grinning maliciously. "I'll let you guess. Ever heard of the Demon King of the Far East?" Issei asked, making Calawarna think. After a couple of seconds, bells started to ring in her head as she recalled a book she once read about a demon that almost devoured the heavens themselves. a demonic deity that rose to beyond divinity itself. The demon that rose from the depths of hell all the way to the highest of the heavens, the legendary demon god Akuma. You mean demon god Akuma? Kalawarna asked shakily, making Issei chuckle at her reaction and calmed her down by pressing his finger on her forehead. Yes, I am him, Issei confirmed. Then you're the being that almost devoured all of the Shinto gods more than 1,000 years ago, she asked, making Issei nod before giving an annoyed look. I would have if it wasn't for that punk Amino Minakanashi sacrificing his body and soul to revive all the gods I devoured before him in my stomach. Then all these gods tried to escape through my stomach, which made me forced to puke them all out, leaving me very vulnerable, which gave the change to Izanagi to slice me into bits with his sword. But I was smart and split my soul and power amongst my sliced-off limbs and weapons, which allowed me to transcend death, Issei explained with a grin before looking back up at the ceiling. But now with that stupid punk gone, they won't be able to pull one like that again. So when I get my full power back, I'll finally devour the heavens and claim the throne as the supreme demon god, Issei declared, making Kalawarna look in awe. However, another question rose as she couldn't help but wonder about something. Were you almost a demon? There were no records that explained your origin, Kalawarna asked softly. Issei just raised an eyebrow before letting out another sigh. I wasn't a demon when I was born. I was once a human by the name Issei Hayaoru. You must have guessed by now, but this body I'm in and the father of this brat are actually my descendant when I was a human. Long ago, more than 15 years ago, I was once heir to the Hayaoru clan. The Hayaoru clan were one or many that sought power, lands, and riches. My family were in constant conflict amongst other families. I had a ton of brothers and sisters, but they all died in battle, assassination, or through suicide. I was the only one that kept fighting and survived each battle. Eventually, when I was a young adult, my father died and I became head of the Hayaoru clan. I had a ton of wives. I don't remember the exact count, but I think it was more than 50. Maybe even more. But that's not important. I had a ton of kids and lived a quite privileged life. Issei stopped as he looked straight with his crimson eyes narrowing a bit. But one fateful day I was abducted by an enemy clan. I was chained in their basement and tortured for months. I was forced to cannibalize other prisoners to prevent myself dying from starvation. They even forced me to kill and eat my own wives and kids, just for their own amusement. Eventually I lost all sense of humanity and in my deepest moments of despair summoned a devil to the human world. It was a woman that offered me the chance to fight against everybody. In return for that chance I will have to help her in the future, which I assume is the current era. But back to me. The devil woman left me a black spider lily which I ate without thinking for a moment of hesitation. I slowly evolved from a weak human to a power-hungry demon without mercy and care. I killed everybody that stood in my way. Men, women, children, my own and flesh. I destroyed my rival clans and my own. They were nothing to me anymore, as nothing of my past life was important to me. What I truly care for is myself and my own desire. From that point I kept conquering territories and slowly purged Japan of any life that existed. Normal or supernatural, I killed and devoured them without exception. Yaokais, angels, fallen angels, devils, and even gods and dragons. I killed and devoured them without stop. Eventually I reached a level unlike any other. I became the strongest on earth and continuously destroyed my opponents, no matter who they were. Even the sacred gear users weren't much of a challenge. At some point, I wanted to take my goals to the higher level and challenge the heavens themselves. I fight and conquered all the gods I came across. Even the pillar gods were no issue. Hell, even the creation god Izanagi fell victim to my power and I devoured him as well. But it came to an end when I went after the ancient deities before Izanagi, devouring each deity after the other. Eventually I came across the man where it all began, Amino Minakanashi. It was my toughest fight and I really had to try against that man. But eventually, after perhaps months of fighting, I finally was able to weaken him to the point that I could have devoured him. But he selflessly sacrificed himself to somehow revive all the gods and deities that I previously had devoured in my stomach, which forced me to vomit them all out. And using that chance, Izanagi sliced me into pieces, but like I said before, I saved myself by splitting my soul and power amongst my corpse and weapons. Which bring me all the way back here, 15 years later, where my faithful servant from back of the day find a way to reincarnate me into my descendant's body using a fraction of my soul. Crazy story, right? Issei asked as Kalawarna just nodded as she took the entire story in. After a minute she couldn't help but smile as she looked back at her master. So you're planning to finish what you started from all that time ago, she asked, making Issei nod. Yes, and you'll be by my side like a good servant, Issei answered before lifting her up and making her sit on his lap. You'll be mine forever, Issei stated before ing Kalawarna on the mouth, which made the fallen angel him back with full force as the two started their intent lovemaking. Somewhere else, the loyal mate of Issei Hayaoru suddenly felt a wave of dread wash over her as she had an unpleasant feeling all of a sudden. I feel something is off, she thought to herself before resuming her work. After Issei's steamy night with Kalawarna, Issei woke up from the smell of delicious food being prepared for him. Brining himself to stand up, Issei made his way to the table and sat down. Kalawarna placed a cup of coffee on the table, which Issei gladly took. My master, what are your plans for today? Kalawarna asked, making Issei swallow his coffee before answering. Honestly, it depends. I'm tempted to kill these devils that are lingering around this town. They are high-ranking devils in status if I'm not wrong. so that would attract the underworld to me. I can't really have that now with my power at its minimum, so we'll have to stay low and play along. I'm not going to that human school. I figure something out with the devils when they come and ask questions. Issei answered as he took another sip of his coffee. Understood. But I should also inform about the other reason we were here. Calawarna began as Issei interrupted her. You mean the excommunicated holy maiden with that healing sacred gear, right? Personally, I don't see any use for her. Her sacred gear is a basic healing technique with it being able to affect any race. I can teach you healing magic 10 times more effective than that. Issei spoke boldly, making Calawarna nod as she wasn't surprised that her master had an ability superior than a rare kind of sacred gear. But the idea of being able to learn such magic did intrigue her. You're willing to learn me that, my master? She asked, making Issei nod. Yeah, but first I need more of my power back. After that I'll have to transform you into a demon like myself back in the day. It makes teaching that kind of magic much easier. Issei replied as he finished his cup. Calawarna nodded as she took the cup and refilled it. So what should we do with the nun? Calawarna asked. Issei rested his head on his fist before thinking. From what I can tell from Rainer's memories, the nun is naive and easy to manipulate. Being sheltered in a church with no actual social life makes her an easy target. I can leave her to the devils here. But perhaps I can use her to see how far I can push the soul. Let's give it a try. Issei thought before looking back at Calawarna. Maybe I can make something useful out of her. Apart from healing, she isn't good in any form of magic or something else from what I get. I think I'll use her as a test project to see what I can make of her. I want you to go back to that church and clean things up. Also, I will go find Kurumi to obtain some of my powers back. If things go well, you and that nun might prove to become useful to me in the future. So go and stay out of trouble. Issei ordered, making Calawarna shocked before nodding and teleporting away. Issei stayed by the table for a moment before thinking. So first I need to get my body part back. Kurumi surely has one, but about the rest that will be difficult. Second is the nun. She is supposed to arrive in this town one of these days. I have to make sure to find her before the devils do. And lastly, way about the devils, as much I want to kill them, bringing attention to myself so early wouldn't be a good move. Issei thought to himself before standing up. Alright, let's kill some people. Issei then disappeared from his house and reappeared somewhere in an old dusty building where he felt an odd demonic energy signature. Walking in the building without any care, Issei appeared in the house without even having to open the door as he watched a devil happily feasting onto a poor human woman that looked to have been D as well, judging from her shattered clothes. Having fun there, Issei asked with a grin as he walked towards the devil, who turned to him. Back off, punk, she's my meal, the devil shrieked, which made Issei grin as he looked at him and his breakfast with a smirk. Trust me, friend, she doesn't look appetizing to me in the first place. What you on the other hand would make a good snack. Issei's voice scared the devil, who stood up and fired a demonic energy blast at Issei, who just kept grinning as the blast dispersed before it can even touch him. What the devil yelled as Issei just chuckled. Hyukuku, a simple attack of demonic energy won't be able to kill anyone, dear. You have to polish it more before you use it, like this. Right when Issei said that, the devil suddenly had a giant hole in his, which surprised him as Issei didn't even have moved at all. He looked down in disbelief as he failed to notice Issei coming close to him and placing his hand on his shoulder. The devil couldn't even utter a word anymore as his body was suddenly warped into a small dark red gem. Issei took the gem into his mouth before swallowing and letting out a sigh. However, Issei suddenly felt a pain in his stomach which made him barf back up what looked to be some kind of chess piece. Is that? Issei asked as he inspected the little bishop piece. He can tell that it contained demonic energy along with a strange magical complex formula. Being curious, Issei raised the bishop piece to his mouth and focused his energy into his teeth and bit through the bishop piece before turning it into bits and swallowing it. After a moment, Issei opened his eyes as he absorbed the magic contained in the crystal. A reincarnation magic spell along with an enslavement spell. Interesting. Maybe I can use it for Calawarna. I should test that out, Issei said as he then used a magic circle to call someone. He previously didn't have enough magic energy to do this, but now thanks to that devil, he had enough to make a call to an important person. A female voice answered the call. Hello, Kurumi, I hope you haven't forgotten my voice, Issei replied, making the woman on the other side of the call let out a happy sigh. Kurumi stated, making Issei chuckle. I know you have my Kurumi, but I assume you already know why I call you, Issei said, making the maid nod. Kurumi replied before cutting off the call. Issei didn't have to wait long as a green magic circle appeared beside him and Kurumi appeared out of it. Good to see you, my dear, Issei grinned as the maid went on a knee with a smile. I'm honored to be back by your side. Kurumi's voice was filled with admiration as Issei mentioned for her to stand back up. Good, you haven't changed when it came to your loyalty. That's good, Issei said as he walked up to her. Not wasting a single moment, Issei had her on the lips, which the maid happily returned. However, Issei kept it short as he broke the much to the maid's disappointment. Not yet, we have a lot of important matters to talk about, such as my body parts, Issei inquired, which made Kurumi nod as she took out a box and revealed the old bone. One of your pieces, my master. It was the one here founded in Kyoto, Kurumi informed, making Issei nod as he took the bone. It was one of my horns back in the day. Well, at least that is one of the entire puzzle, Issei said as he ate his own horn before swallowing it. For a moment nothing happened as Issei's crimson eyes just glowed for a bit as Issei let out a wild grin. Well, at least it is 5% restored. Any process on the other pieces? Kurumi nodded. I've been able to convince the old Satan faction and the super devil Rhizome live in Lucifer to hunt down for your body and weapons to help them with their own plans. However, currently all the other parts are heavily guarded thanks to me stealing this part 18 years ago. It would take a lot of effort to steal them all back, Kurumi informed as Issei nodded before grinning. That's no issue. When the time comes for the devils to take my parts, I will help them by disrupting the barriers. Just now I sensed a connection with all my parts that contains my soul. I can even control them to a degree. So when these fools are ready I will disrupt all the barriers in Japan so they can steal the parts from me, Issei revealed, surprising Kurumi, who smiled in return. Marvelous idea. I will inform the leaders about the development. I inform you when they are ready. You can dispel the barriers. This will certainly cause a huge conflict, Kurumi warned. Well, sometimes we have to take the risk. Anyhow, I will be busy with a side project for the next couple of days. Call me when you need me for those barriers. Also, don't tell them that I'm back. I don't want to be bothered by these annoying bats for now, Issei ordered, which made the maid nod. Understood, my master. Kurumi then vanished back to the old Satan faction as Issei was left alone. Well, step 1 done. Time to find that holy maiden, Issei said to himself before letting out a sigh. Things are looking to become entertaining in this new era. A young girl with blonde hair and green eyes was walking in the park, confused and lost. The girl looked around while holding a large suitcase and failed to notice a bump on the ground. This made her trip and almost fell down, but something caught her. Hey there, careful now. The blonde girl opened her eyes as she found herself in the arms of a handsome young man with beautiful crimson eyes. I'm sorry I'm so clumsy, the girl apologized, but Issei just gave a small. Don't worry, you look lost. Do you need to be somewhere? Issei asked, making the girl nod. Yes, I am looking for the church in this town, the girl replied, which made Issei nod. I see, I'll bring you there. But first, what's your name? Issei asked, making the girl smile as she looked at her hero. Asia Argento. May I have yours? Asia answered with a bright smile. Issei Hayaudu. Pleasure to meet you, Asia. Issei answered with a smile of his own. Let's get you to the church. I happen to know someone there. Issei gestured for Asia to follow him, which she did, not knowing she was walking straight into her own doom. As Issei guided Asia to the empty church, he made some small talk to not look suspicious. He witnessed her use her sacred gear on some crying monkey on the street and later explained how she got excommunicated from the church for healing a devil. Issei had to hold in the urge to laugh out loud, being kicked out for her doing her job but not knowing better. Like, talk about being ignorant. After making their way to the church, Issei turned to Asia. I'll go inside and tell my friend that you're here. She is normally the only way in the church today. Wait a moment, Issei ordered as he entered the building. Asia nodded as she patiently waited for Issei to return, which after a minute he did with a large smile on his face. Come inside. Issei held open the door as Asia walked inside of the large church and looked at it with curiosity. It looked much like an ordinary one but had a bunch of odd ornaments and statues standing around. California, who wore a nun's uniform, walked towards them with a smile on her face. You must be Asia. It's a pleasure to see you here. California greeted the blonde nun, who smiled at her as she bowed. It's an honor to have been received by you, Asia thanked, making California nod her head. No worries, sister. Today you will work here alongside me. But first, you must do the welcoming ritual, California informed, which confused Asia. Welcoming ritual? She asked, confused, as Issei started explaining the obvious trap they had placed. Here in Japan, those that want to deepen their relationship with God have to partake in the welcoming ritual, which is a ritual where the person completely submit their body, mind, and soul to allow God to welcome you into his embrace and purify you of all your sins. It would also allow you to become forgiven of your past sins, Issei explained, which immediately piqued Asia's interests. It was her goal to repent for her past actions, so without a moment of hesitation she accepted. Please allow me to do the ritual, Asia begged, making Issei turn to California, who nodded with a smile. Of course. Please wait while I set up the ritual. Issei, sir, would you please assist me? California asked, making Issei nod. Of course, I'll love to help others. Not, Issei replied as he walked towards the altar as he looked at California with a suggestive look. Sister Asia, please follow me. We have to put you into the appropriate clothing for the ritual, California informed as Asia followed her to the back. Yes, thanks. Asia followed California to the back rooms where Issei was left at the altar. A massive grin morphed onto his face as he cracked his neck. Time to go to work. Last time I turned someone into a demon was Kurumi, but that was through my own power. I can't do that now, which means I have to use another method to transform them, and I have found the way to do it, Issei thought as he recalled the events long ago where he was the one responsible for Kurumi, who was once a human now turned demon like him. Kurumi's transformation happened through transfer of his and bit of his power. This made Kurumi the same kind of demon that Issei was. But now that Issei was back to mostly human, that leaves Issei unable to use his to transform them. But thanks to Issei finding out about the evil pieces through that stray devil, he found another way to transform them, through the reincarnation formula that was present in the evil pieces. But Issei tweaked them a bit to suit his desires more. A regular demon would be useless to me. I need to first know what I'm dealing with, Issei thought before creating a very complex magic circle on the altar. He inspected the magic circle before nodding. This ritual spell will allow me to affect her soul and body at the same time. If I understand correctly, the evil piece transfers the demonic energy that was stored by the king and transfer it to the servant, which allows it to alter their biological DNA, while also keeping their original DNA, making some form of hybrid. Issei thought as he saw that Calawarna was back with Asia, who wore a very transparent gown. The ritual circle is ready. Please lay down on it and close your eyes, Issei introduced as Asia nodded and followed his instructions. Stepping up the altar and laying down on her back, she instinctively held her hands on her stomach together like in a prayer before closing her eyes. This ritual is quite complex. Please don't try to resist it, Asia, Calawarna informed with a large sadistic smile as she watched Issei stand behind the altar with a smirk of his own. Calawarna stood by Asia's head and started to say forth a false prayer to calm Asia's nerves. Slowly the ritual spell went into effect as Asia's body was covered in a multicolored aura as the nun felt her whole body was being affected in a weird way. While Asia was laying down, she failed to notice Issei raising his hand towards her. Submit your body and soul to your new god, Asia Argento. He sensed that Asia started to lose conscience as he placed his hand on her head and grinned. Devour. In an instant, Asia's body slowly started to morph itself into a small green gem into Issei's hand. Naive fool, Issei said as he looked at the green gem before swallowing it into his mouth. Letting out a sigh, Issei looked back at the magic circle and aimed his hand towards it. Calawarna looked confused. My lord, what are you exactly doing? She asked. This magic circle is a special made reincarnation spell that I created. But before I can use it, I needed to record Asia's body and soul into my own body. After that I can summon her soul from my body and give her a new body since her old one was utterly useless. Now I'm deconstructing Asia's original body in my stomach and reconstructing it at the same time. Now I'm also tampering with the girl's memories. Her whole life I altered any important memories she might have. Her love for God and the church has turned into nothing but pure hatred thanks to her unjustified excommunication. And now she believes I'm her new god. Well, it isn't wrong to be fair, but still hilarious how easy it is to with someone's life. It's ready, Issei stated as from his hand a blacking aura erupted as slowly the new body of Asia Argento was placed on the altar. Calawarna immediately noticed that the body was changed to much her master's desires more. It was taller by a couple of inches as well. Also the hair became an ash-white color compared to the original Sunhead blonde hair. Also her assets have gone up a bunch of sizes, being at least a decent C-cup. Now time to place her soul into her new body. Issei grinned as from his hand a greenish sphere flew from his hand towards Asia's new body and slowly entered it. And lastly, the reincarnation spell, Issei said as he activated the magic circle on the altar, and Asia's body was surrounded by a green blacking aura. After a moment the aura died down as Asia slowly opened her eyes, revealing a pair of golden eyes with vertical slits similar to that of a dragon's. Welcome back to the land of the living, my Asia, Issei greeted the former nun, who blinked before smiling at him and stepping off the altar before bowing. It's an honor to meet you, my lord. Thank you for learning me my place, Asia said with conviction, which surprised Calawarna. The voice was the same, but the tone from the shy girl was gone completely. Good. Now listen here. You aren't a human anymore. You're a demon like what I used to be and soon will be again in the near future. I have given you a lot of abilities and potential to become useful to me. If you fail to meet my expectations, I devour you again. Understood? Issei asked while pressing his foot onto Asia's head. Yes, my lord, I'll do my best to meet your expectations, Asia replied with determination, making Issei nod. Good. Also, when I devoured you, you lost your sacred gear. It has something to do with the system of God, but not it was very useful in the first place. Here, stand up, Issei ordered as he removed his foot from her head as Asia immediately stood back up as he commanded. Issei closed his eyes and concentrating his energy a bit. Issei then revealed his hand showing a pair of rings. Issei then grabbed Asia by her shoulder and shoved the rings into her body. Asia had to resist as her body felt her body being covered in a black and green aura before it died down. Take these as my gift to you. They are made to store souls inside of to use them to enhance your magic in any way. I've already put the souls of my parents and Rainier into them, but you will have to steal more souls to further its effects, Issei advised, making Asia nod her head in understanding. I understand, thank you for this gift, Asia thanked, making Issei nod before thinking. I have to you both myself since Kurumi will be busy for the time being. Also Calawarna, you're next, but I'm just going to change your body since you're already loyal to me, Issei informed, which made the fallen angel nod. Issei walked over to her and placed her hand on her shoulder. Devour. Calawarna was then turned into a dark purple gem which Issei swallowed as well. After a moment Issei held out his hand towards the altar where he created another magic circle similar to the one be used on Asia, and summoned Calawarna's body from it. Compared to Asia, Calawarna stayed mostly the same. He then also summoned her soul as well and activated the spell as Calawarna was reincarnated as well into a demon. Calawarna soon woke up as she stood up and immediately kneeled for her master. Good. Now that's done with, here is the plan. Since both of you are now demons with both having different specialities and abilities that I decided for you, I will personally train you for the time being. I figure out a secluded place for you to train, and this church will be used as my base. Disappoint me in any way and I'll dispose of you without a second thought. Understood? Both girls immediately nodded. Yes, my lord, both girls replied in unison as Issei grinned. Good, now time for both of you to offer your bodies to me, Issei declared as both girls happily obliged into serving their master with their body in the abandoned church. The day after Issei had transformed Kalawarna and Asia into demons, Issei decided to finally meet up with the devils. It was a school day, but he intentionally decided to be late so these monkeys wouldn't bother him too much. He left Kalawarna and Asia in the church after placing a barrier to protect them. After entering the school building and using the auras of the devils, Issei found his way to the student council. Not even willing to knock, Issei opened the door and looked around. Only the student council president, who was shocked to see him, was present. "Sup, Waterbet?" Issei addresses Sona as he closed the door behind him and walked over to her desk without a care in the world. "Issei Hayao, how are you alive?" Sona asked, confused. "I came back from the dead. Anyway, we have to talk about." Issei sat down and crossed his legs. The aura he gave off was a total 180 of what the pervert used to be. Also, the big problem was that how in hell was he back alive? From Ria's reports, Issei was killed by the fallen angel after she seduced him to go on a date with him. Okay, Sona took a second to regain her bearing as she pushed up her glasses before looking at Issei. "What do you wish to talk about?" Her question was answered by Issei pulling out of the piece of paper that had the Gremory family crest on it. Sona immediately recognized this and already got a feeling of what he was going to say. "When I went on my date with that crow, a familiar gave this to me. I assume you already know what is going on here. That red-haired bat wanted to use the summoning circle to come close to me after I was killed, and then enslave me with that piece of crystal you uses to reincarnate others into devils," Issei explained before letting out a grin. "Girl was lucky that I didn't accidentally summon her there, or else she would have met a very early death." Issei's words shocked the Citriaris. It sounded so sinister and malicious, like there was no way that this Issei was the same as the pervert from before. Also, the glowing crimson eyes were also a dead giveaway. "I see, but that normally would be the case for Issei Hayao. But who are you then, stranger?" Sona asked seriously with a bit of her aura leaking. Issei's grin didn't falter as he let out a portion of his own aura which immediately dominated Sona's. But he kept it in check so that only she could sense it. "Not bad, girl. But would you believe me that I'm actually also Issei Hayao?" he asked, making Sona look confused before asking. "As an Issei Hayao from early Japan, I've read once about Japan's history that there existed a Hayao clan around 1500 years ago." "Would you mean you are someone of that family of that time?" she asked while trying not to show her obvious fear. Issei blinked as he didn't expect her to figure it out that easily. Issei couldn't help but let out an actual laughter. "Aha, you know your stuff, girl. Yes, I'm someone from that era reincarnated in my own descendant," Issei admitted before resting his head on his fist. "Then answer me this. Are you aware of the demon known as Akuma?" Issei asked, making Sona slowly look even more serious as she nodded. "Yes, demon god Akuma, or better known as Demon King of the Far East. The demon that single-handedly nearly destroyed all of Japan and the entire Shinto heaven. His corpse and weapons are what shields Japan from threats from the outside. However, the corpse part that protected Kyo almost 2 decades ago has been stolen by someone of the old Satan faction," Sona answered, making Issei whistle as the girl knew her stuff quite well. "Damn girl, how about you write my autobiography right now while you at it?" Issei joked as Sona's body became tense. Was this man in front of him really the Demon King that dominated the entire Shinto pantheon by himself? It suited crazy, but her instincts were telling her that this man had the arrogance of a king and the presence of a conqueror. Her mind slowly gave into the thought as Issei grinned at her pale face. "You are really him?" she asked with a quivering voice as Issei let out a loud sadistic laughter. "You want to destroy this school with everybody in it to prove it?" he asked while raising a finger that showed a small of demonic energy. "No, please don't. I understand you are the Demon King of the East, but what are you doing here? Revealing this to me?" she asked nervously as Issei toyed with the small demonic sphere that can easily blow up the entire school of the map. "Getting to know the people in charge of this town. I know you and the redhead are calling the shots here. Also, you two are related to the current kings of hell, right? It makes more sense to make use of you rather than kill you off," Issei nonchalantly replied, making Sona nervous at the casual mention that he would kill her and Ria's knowing the consequences of their siblings hunting him down. Sona let out a sigh to calm her nerves. "Are you saying you want to strike a deal with me?" she asked, making Issei chuckle before shrugging. "You're assuming too much, girl. If I want something, I'll take it with force. It's more of finding something that might prove useful to me in the future when I restart my conquest," Issei replied, making Sona narrow her eyes before realizing something. "You want me to stay quiet about your return? You could have easily hidden away, but you needed to show yourself around us for some reason, which leaves you having no other choice than to explain yourself to one of us. And most likely you want me to enter some form of contract to prevent me or Rias to report you to our older siblings," Sona theorized as Issei gave her an actual interested look. "You're more clever than I expected. Yes, you're right. I need to be in the open for a bit, but you noisy devils will start asking questions. So here I came to you, the one that thinks before they act, and came to offer you a deal. It's called a binding vow, which is the old way of making deals with the devil. Now what I want is you for me to hide my actions and my true identity from anyone, and nobody is allowed to know until I give express permission. In return for that, I will give you a favor that you cash in at any time," Issei offered, making Sona think for a moment. This was a risky making a deal with the demon that the original Satans feared. Sona, however, felt that she might get something good out of this and raised her hand, showing 3 fingers. 3 favors, and then I'll accept to your conditions, Sona stated, which made Issei's brow ache in annoyance. However, he did like that this girl had the to challenge him like that. Fine, I accept those conditions. Issei accepted as the two felt a shift in their body as the binding vow has been created. Standing up, Issei started walking out of the room, but before leaving he turned to her. Don't worry, I won't destroy your little school for now. I'm busy with my own plans. Also, when the red-haired bat asks questions, tell her that I'm someone she should avoid at all cost. And if she doesn't listen, then I'll beat her up badly that she'll have to learn. But I won't kill her or any of her slaves. With that, Issei left the student council and walked through the halls of the school unbothered. He walked past a few classes and was about to walk down some stairs until a voice called out to him. And where do you think you're going? Issei cursed his luck as he looked to the side and saw Ria's Gremory standing there high and mighty on the top of the stairs. Home, Issei answered unbothered as he stepped down and was about to leave, but his path was blocked by Akino. Ara, not so fast there, cute, Akino teased as Issei had to urge to vomit. Get lost. Issei's words made Akino suddenly move her body without her even realizing, which surprised the queen as she turned to Issei. Stop, we just want to talk. Ria's voice called out, making Issei annoyed. He turned to the pair of girls and gave an annoyed look. What do you want? I'm a busy man. Issei asked, annoyed as his urge to decapitate them was insanely high. What are you doing here? Hayao, you should have been dead. Ria's asked seriously, which made Issei just raise an eyebrow at her. And how would you know that, princess? Did you have anything to do with my little date with my dinner? Issei asked, which confused as to why he referred to Rainier as dinner. But both looked serious as Ria showed a bit of sweat. Issei, however, was done with the small talk and decided to punish these girls for annoying him. For messing with my life like that. You both should be punished. With a snap of his fingers, Ria's and Akino's clothes were suddenly torn off their bodies, leaving them butt naked in the middle of the school as both girls immediately covered themselves and tried to either teleport away or summon some clothes. Yeah, I kinda placed an anti-magic curse onto you both for the next hour. So better start running as you don't want anybody to see you, right? Issei asked with a sadistic grin before turning to the fire alarm of the school and aiming his finger like a gun. And in a moment the device shattered as the alarms around the school started blaring loudly. Both Ria's and Akino widened their eyes in horror before running off to somewhere, but it was too late as someone without a doubt has already saw the two girls butt naked running away. Well, that's handled. These girls won't bother me again, Issei said happily as he teleported away, not realizing that someone had seen him leave through a magic circle. After Issei's little prank on Ria's and Akino, he returned back to his church as Calawarna and Asia were both in meditating positions with their aura surrounding them. Both were extremely heavily focused as they failed to notice Issei's arrival, who watched with a passive look. Asia is the one with more potential thanks to her natural talent in magic. Calawarna, however, seemed to be more of a close-range fighter. Both are getting close in the hang of their demonic energy control, Issei thought as he left the pair alone as he arrived at the roof of the church and laid down. I guess I have to find other potential servants. That Sona girl was a high-ranking devil with a talent in water magic. Perhaps she would make a fine addition. But I have to break her loyalties with her faction. This might be tricky, Issei muttered to himself before grinning. That what makes it interesting. Issei closed his eyes as he suddenly sensed someone teleporting next to him. Hello, Kurumi. Issei didn't have to open his eyes to know that it was his loyal mate who had visited him. My master, I've brought news regarding the old Satan faction. They are preparing their troops to steal your body parts. If things go smoothly, they will have at least 5 of the remaining 14 that are left, Kurumi informed as she kneeled beside him. Issei opened his eyes before looking back at her. That's good. Let these fools obtain my parts so they can it for themselves. In the end, I'll take them back from them one way or the other. I guess you convince them to hunt down the parts with the most power, so you can steal the weaker parts while at the same time drawing attention to them, Issei assumed, making Kurumi nod. Yes, the old Satan faction desire to use the stronger parts of your corpse, so that leaves the weaker parts where I will take the chance to steal them back. I've marked every location and have already set teleportation marks, Kurumi agreed, making Issei smirk. Always so ahead. That's why you always will be my favorite. I assume you're also here to tell me I have to dispel the barriers, Issei asked, which Kurumi nodded to while trying to hide her obvious happy smile. Soon. I'll call you tomorrow when the time is right, Kurumi informed before wondering something. But while I will be able to obtain a couple of parts, there is a good chance that I won't be able to get every one of them. How should we handle that? Kurumi asked as Issei just shrugged his shoulders. The moment I dispel the barriers and break the seals, all kind of evil spirits and yaokais will try and obtain my parts. It's like a treasure for them that they could use to become stronger. Honestly, let them have it. It would cause for more chaos and will pull the attention away from me for the time being. I'm very certain that the Shinto gods are already heavily guarded with the first part being stolen, Issei theorized as Kurumi nodded. Indeed, they have heavily increased security after I stole the part here in Kuo, Kurumi agreed. Then I'll tell the old Satan faction that we are almost ready. I'll call you when it's time. See you soon, my master. Kurumi then vanished as Issei gave a small sigh. Good, things are speeding up nicely. Issei then closed his eyes again as he took a nap. After waking up, Issei let out a yawn before entering the church. Calawarna and Asia had moved on from meditating to sparring with Calawarna using a demonic energy lance to try and stab Asia, who was defending herself with magic. Issei looked at them for a moment before thinking about something. Both of them are decent in their respective fields, but I need also a strategist. Sona seems like a smart girl. Not to mention I can tell her that she has something hidden behind her facade, Issei thought before leaving unnoticed by the sparring partners. Then perhaps I can draw that talent out when her guard is dropped. Issei mused as he decided to hunt down some random stray devils that were in the area since he was bored. Issei had arrived back at school. He still hasn't gotten the call from Kurumi to deactivate the barriers, so Issei was off wondering what to do. Since nothing really interested him apart from the Citri devil, Issei decided to go visit her, and luckily she was again alone in her room. Entering the room without knocking, Sona looked shocked for a moment before composing herself and sitting back down. "Hello, Issei. What can I help you with?" she asked formally as Issei laid down on the couch in her room. "Just a bit bored. There isn't a lot to do for the moment, so I came here to chat with you," Issei replied, surprising Sona, who just accepted that what Issei wanted, since she was in no way had the authority to send him away. "Fine. What do you wish to talk about?" Sona asked curiously as she put her don'ts down and walked over and sat down on the other couch next to Issei's. "Well, what a devil like you is doing in Japan. From what I understood, devils look down on humans and see them themselves as superior. So why are you here attending a school of all places?" Issei asked, making Sona let out a sigh. "Well, it was mostly Rias who demanded that we went to Japan since she is very interested in Japanese culture and whatnot. The reason why I'm here is to learn about human education," Sona answered, which made Issei raise an eyebrow. "For what reason would you want to do that?" he asked as Sona had a distant look on her face. "My dream is to open up a rating game school in the underworld for the lower class citizens," Sona answered without looking Issei in the eyes. Issei, however, could see something else within Sona. "Is that really your dream?" Issei asked, making Sona look surprised as she nodded. "Of course. Why would I lie about that?" she asked, confused as Issei sat up and gave a smirk. "Is it because you gave up on something else like your original dream?" Issei asked with a knowing smirk as Sona grew a bit nervous as she failed to look Issei in the eyes. "And I know my dreams were always to help." Sona stopped as Issei suddenly appeared by her side and made her look at him with his hand grasping her chin. "To surpass the people around you, right? I can tell you have this aura of longing and desire. When I first met you yesterday, it confused me, but after realizing who you are, it started to make sense. You're the younger sister of the current devil King Leviathan, who is also the strongest female devil alive. This means that you automatically were placed in her shadow the moment of your birth. Also, people look at your friend Ria's Gremory, who obvious is more eye candy out of you too, which leaves you again in someone else's shadow. I guess you wanted to be like your sister, but the gap between you two is immense, and even against others of your generation like Ria's, you failed to stack up to them. Am I wrong?" Issei's words were slowly invading Sona's mind, who started to remember her childhood of being always in someone else's shadow. From her older sister to her childhood friend, she always was forgotten by everyone. Apart from the Citri name, she was nothing and always would have been. She once had the dream to become someone even greater than her sister and show that she was simply more than the heiress of the Citri clan. But slowly when she grew older, that dream faded away. So that's why Sona tried to do something out of the norm, to somewhat gain attention and rise in popularity. However, slowly Sona started to realize that her goal of opening a rating game school will probably never meet the light of day. Sona couldn't help but slowly clench her fists in anger as those old memories of her past started to haunt her. Turning back to Issei, she gave him a glare as her violet eyes started glowing. "Yes, I wanted to become someone greater than my older sister. I wanted to become stronger and better than Ria's, but I failed. I can't seem to understand why I can't grow stronger," Sona muttered as Issei looked at her eyes for a moment before smirking. "Because you gave up on your hunger for power when you wanted to start that stupid school. You wish to surpass your sister, right? Then you should go and train like no other. Fight and learn through battles and devour anybody who dares stand in your way. Destroy your enemies and let those who observe quiver in fear at your might. That is what I did back in the day, and look at me. I'm a demon that successfully had dominated the entire Shinto pantheon. If it wasn't for some bullshit move to gain unlimited power, you should drown anybody and anything in your path. Your family, your friends, your clan, and even your peerage. They will only stand in your way if you wish to become the version you dreamt of being. You will need to leave everything behind." Issei's words lingered in Sona's head as Issei stood back up and slowly started walking towards the desk where a picture of Sona with her family was placed. Taking it up, he turned to her with a smirk. "Or else you stay like you know and stay being a poor copy of your sister, a slave to your family, and a shadow to Ria's Gremory." Issei placed the picture back on the desk as he was about to leave. But Sona called out to him. "Are you telling me that you're able to help me achieve to become the person I want to be?" Sona asked with hope. The darkness that had invaded her mind slowly started to devour her logical side and any resistance against the Demon King. "Yes, I can. I can make you someone that will make your sister envious of. However, if you wish my help, you will need to drown everyone and everything," Issei replied as Sona nodded before nodding and standing up with a determined look. "I'll do it. I'll cash in one of my favors. Help me turn into the person I desire to become," Sona ordered as Issei grinned before nodding. "Good. Come to the abandoned church later tonight alone," Issei informed before turning around to leave. "There is no going back when you take this path, Sona. Remember that. With that, Issei left, leaving Sona alone, who thought about her actions just now. She looked down as she thought about making such a risky deal. But inside, her inner devil, who wanted to become someone her older sister would be envious of. It slowly made her realize that Issei was right. She will stay in her shadow if she doesn't go after her dreams. Looking up, her eyes glowing with determination, Sona nodded to herself. I will succeed. After an uneventful day, Issei finally received the call from Kurumi. So it's time, Issei asked, making the maid on the other side of the call nod. Kurumi answered, which made Issei nod. Good. Let chaos run free, Issei muttered as he closed the call before making a hand sign with both hands and focusing his energy. After a moment, a massive shift in energy erupted as everybody suddenly felt pure malice course through the entirety of Japan and other countries nearby. Issei had dispelled all the barriers that protected Japan by making the seal that was using his parts and weapons go into overdrive, which was possible with each piece containing his soul, allowing him to remotely control them from a distance. Issei could feel chaos erupting in Japan. Mostly spirits and yokais who were affected by his power were turned into evil spirits that started to rampage through the lands. These gods will have a good time cleaning them up. Issei laughed to himself as, apart from Kyoto, who was pretty safe compared to the more populated cities like Tokyo and Kyoto, who most likely have already turned to a war zone, Issei was basking in the feeling of chaos coursing through the entirety of Japan. Feels like the old times, Issei said out loud while watching the blue sky slowly becoming more cloudy with dark clouds. It appears that Susanoo was angry, haha. Issei watched as it soon started raining harshly with a ton of thunder as well. Issei, despite not being able to see them, his senses were telling him that many gods have descended to stop the crisis he just created. It stayed like this for the next hour before a green magic circle appeared as Kurumi came out of it. Greetings, my lord. I've brought you 4 of your parts, Kurumi greeted while kneeling down. Issei sat back up with a grin as Kurumi presented what looked to be body parts of a decaying corpse. He took the corpse parts into his hands and inspecting them. Good. I assume the old Satan faction have the 5 containing most of my power, Issei asked, making Kurumi nod in agreement. Yes, all the old Satan faction leaders and Rizvam and Euclid Lucifuge possesses the more powerful parts. What should be our next step going forwards, Kurumi asked, making Issei smirk. Let these fools kill themselves. Now that the old Satan faction will be blamed for the sudden chaos in Japan, everybody will focus their attention on them. Even with my parts, they will eventually die, so let them kill themselves. I'm currently working on making some useful servants here in Kyoto, Issei answered, which confused Kurumi. You've taken a new servant, she asked with a hint of jealousy which Issei immediately sensed. He stood up and walked over the kneeling maid and lifted her chin up. They will never replace you, Kurumi. They are more like test project. They are sacrificial pawns I can use to my advantage, as well as seeing what I can make of those with potential. If they fail to meet my expectations, I'll dispose of them like a chef throws away spoiled ingredients, Issei assured, which made the maid smile genuinely with a blush. Thank you, Master, Kurumi thanked it, being placed in such high regards by a being that couldn't care less about anybody else. But for now I need you to guide these fools into their own death. Let them believe that they have victory in their hands, and when they decide to attack, I'll be the one to take my parts back, Issei ordered as Kurumi nodded with a blushing smile. As you desire, my lord. Kurumi then teleported away as Issei looked at parts before thinking. Well, this should be interesting, Issei mused before opening his mouth and swallowing 3 of the 4 parts. He kept one in his possession as he wanted to test things out before consuming it. Well, Sona should arrive in a few hours. This should be interesting, Issei mused to himself with a wicked grin. It was the middle of the night as Sona had arrived at the abandoned church. The Citrieris let out a sigh. Here goes nothing. There is no coming back from this. Sona then knocked on the door. After a minute the door opened, revealing Kalawarna. Hello, Lady Citri. Master Issei has been expecting you. Please follow me, Kalawarna greeted with a formal bow as she let Sona inside. Kalawarna guided Sona through the strange church, like it was a strange combination of an actual church and a Satan cult, with statues of a very demonic figure that Sona didn't recognize, as well with a ton of altars and worshipping areas. Sona followed Kalawarna as they passed by Asia, who was by an altar where an old human man was laying on. Sona watched as Asia held out her hands above the man as a green aura started to come out of the man's body. After a few seconds, the man's body grew of old and decayed in seconds, which surprised Sona as Asia smiled before letting the body on fire with magic. Kalawarna noticed Sona's shock as she explained what was happening. This church has turned to pray and worship the demon god Akuma, but you already know that our master's real name is Issei Hayaru. This church is also used as a sacrificial place for us to obtain bodies and soul for our master to devour. Come, we will enter the dungeon where he is waiting for you. As Kalawarna went down the stairs, a large steel door stood in front of them. Kalawarna opened the door as she turned to Sona. Please go inside. Master Issei is waiting for you. Sona nodded as she entered the dark room, and Kalawarna immediately closed the door behind her. Sona, however, didn't look phased as she kept walking forwards. As soon the room was filled with torches, revealing Issei sitting on a black and red throne. Hello, Sona. So you've decided to let your old life behind, Issei asked as he stood up. Sona nodded as she gave Issei a serious look. Yes, I'm more than ready to become stronger, Sona said, determined. Issei liked her determination as he snapped his fingers as a barrier around them was placed. Sona felt something familiar from the magic coming from the barrier. Time manipulation, she asked, making Issei nod. Indeed. You wish to become stronger? Yes, well, training you will take a while. So that's why I'm using this. This barrier turns 1 day in this barrier equivalent to 1 hour in real time. So each day you will spend your night training here. That will be around 78 days worth of training with only 1 night being spent. Issei explained as Sona's eyes widened. Such a drastic opportunity to train 78 days worth of training in 1 night pretty much allows her to gain much more experience in a very short time period. So what are we training for tonight? Sona asked as Issei simply shrugged. The very basics. So let's start with you, Sona. You're part of the Citri clan. That means you have a natural talent over the element of water. But something is off. Are you perhaps also part of another clan? Issei asked curiously as he created a seat for Sona and himself to sit on in the middle of the dungeon. Sona sat down before nodding. Yes, my father is the head of the Citri clan. But my mother was actually from the Valefor clan before they became extinct. My mother and older sister are also members, but I have a deeper connection to my mother's clan than my sister. They symbolize the symbol of the snake. However, back in the Civil War, the Valefor clan allied themselves with the old Satan faction and became extinct as a result. However, my mother, who was already married to my father and became a Citri, stayed with the Citri clan and was able to hide any record of her being affiliated with the Valefor clan. My sister didn't have any connection with the clan power-wise. But I do. I've obtained the very rare power within the Valefor clan which is known as the Snake Eyes, but my mother had sealed them away for my entire life because I will be treated with hostility even more if I revealed my eyes. Sona revealed before letting out a sigh. Issei looked curious as he leaned forward so he could see into Sona's eyes. And I assume you can't access that power because they are sealed away, he asked, making Sona nod. Damn, even with that blessing, your family still finds a way to hold you back. Well, I can easily break that seal if you allow me, Issei offered, which made Sona nod immediately. Yes, please. I always wanted to be able to use my eyes, Sona pleaded as Issei just nodded. He could have asked for another favor, but that would clash with the favor she had cashed in beforehand. And even he can't break a binding vow, no matter how powerful he becomes. Bringing his hand towards her head as Sona closed her eyes, he softly pressed his index finger right on her forehead and focusing his magic a bit. Devour. Immediately Issei absorbed the seal placed within Sona's mind that was blocking her other demonic power. Soon a violet aura surrounded her as Sona opened her eyes, showing that her violet eyes stayed the same color. But like Issei, her eyes showed a more vertical slit pupils. Everything all right? Issei asked as Sona blinked a few times as she looked around. After a few moments, she smiled as she turned to Issei. I can see much clearer now. I've read in the history of the Snake Eyes. They are a pair of demonic eyes that allows the user to see the flow of magical energy within anything and read magical sequences with a much higher precision. My grandfather, the father of my mother, was the last wielder of the Snake Eyes before me. He was actually the head of magical academics for high-ranking devils before the Civil War. Sona informed as Issei nodded as his interest has peaked. Much higher precision, that means she is more capable of learning high-level magic. Perhaps even learning to use holy energy. There are very few devils that can use the holy element since I requires much higher level of demonic energy control. It's a gamble, but I'm willing to risk it. Issei thought to himself before nodding. Interesting. We will start with the basics of learning demonic energy control. Afterwards I'll help you master your power over water to a degree you don't have to even use a magic circle for it. That would do it for this night, Issei explained as Sona nodded. Issei snapped his fingers as the seats disappeared as the dungeon showed a bunch of training dummies, punching bags and magic crystal. Issei turned back to Sona with a large wolfish grin. Hope you're ready for hell, Sona, because you're not going to be standing after tonight, haha. Sona gulped at the lingering threat, but she swallowed her saliva before looking determined. I'm ready, Sona assured as her training hour began. Sitting now on the ground in the middle of the training dungeon, Issei sat opposite to Sona as Issei looked at her with a passive stare. So Sona, I'm gonna ask you a few questions first. Answer them truthfully without overthinking about the answer. Understand? Issei asked as Sona nodded. Good. First question. What is demonic energy? Sona gave a confused look at the absurd question before answering. Demonic energy is the magical energy commonly used by devils and demonic entities. She answered straightforward, which made Issei nod. Correct. Second question. How does one use demonic energy? Issei asked again as Sona answered without hesitation. They have to use their imagination to properly use their demonic energy. Issei gave a raised eyebrow before shaking his head. I didn't mean by using it for a spell or demonic power. I'm talking about how does one use their demonic energy alone. No form of technique or spell, just pure demonic energy. Issei corrected himself as Sona blinked in confusion as the answer didn't came to her immediately. I don't know, Sona replied, making Issei close his eyes. It's negative energy. Listen well, because I'm not repeating this. Demonic energy is a form of negative energy that has been used by devils and demons through sinful desires and emotions. Negative energy is born from negative emotions. To explain it in a short way, from negative emotions, negative energy is created. And from negative energy, demonic energy is born. However, demonic energy isn't the only thing born from negative energy. Things like divine energy and dragonic energy can also be born from negative energy. Hell, the holy power used by fallen angels are fueled by negative energy, which is opposite to the pure angels who use positive energy, which is the key difference between the holy energy used by angels and fallen angels. Issei explained as Sona listened attentively. She never knew demonic energy functioned that way. So you're saying that all forms of energy is either created through positive and negative energy? Sona asked in understanding as Issei nodded. Most cases that's so, but there are exceptions. Like dragons are actually positive and negative energy combined, which makes them so strong. And gods have a much deeper connection with positive and negative energy depending what kind of god they are. Issei answered before letting out a sigh. But that's the basics about how demonic energy is created. However, it isn't as simple as you think. Born positive and negative energy are very adaptable and change constantly, which create exceptions like the fallen angel who were once beings that used an element that is born with positive energy but later changed to negative energy. Another exception is the dragon before the beginning of the world, Issei, who technically isn't born with any form of positive and negative energy. It is supposed to be infinite without any form of emotion. But that's enough about that. It's time for you to come in contact with your demonic energy, Sona. Issei let out a breath as he looked at Sona. So you're saying that for me to access my demonic energy I have to draw out my negative energy through bad emotions? She asked, making Issei nod. Yes, now meditate and focus on my voice, Issei ordered as Sona followed. Closing her eyes and adopting a meditating stance, she listened to what had to say. Now focus on what angers you in this world. The entire time you had to stay in your sister's shadow, the fact your family denied your birth blessing because of the shame of your ancestors, the fact that even your peers were given the spotlight, leaving you in the dark all alone with just a citri name. Issei's words brought all these unpleasant memories back. Sona's eyes twitched as her anger started to rise within her body. What do you most in this world, Sona? Issei asked, like a snake coiling around their prey. His words tempting Sona's mind. I want to rise above my sister, to have the fame that she has. I wanted to show off my eyes to everybody. I wanted to get the attention that Riaz is getting, Sona muttered as a blue and violet aura started to surround her. Her own envy rose to the max and it started to literally leak out of her body. Issei watched with a large grin as Sona started to give in into her dark thoughts. And what will you do now if they stand before you? You're going to accept such a dull destiny? Issei asked with his grin glowing larger as Sona's aura rose some more. Her aura started becoming like water surrounding her in the form of a large serpent. I'll drown them, my sister, my family, Riaz, and even my peerage. Nobody will stand in my path for glory. Sona opened her eyes, showing her snake eyes glowing ominously as the water snake around her flared with power. Issei grinned widely as he stood up and clapped. Well done, you already accomplished the first step, Issei praised as Sona slowly calmed down as she looked at her water serpent before dispelling it. I feel lighter, like a burden has been lifted from my shoulders, Sona admitted as Issei chuckled. Giving into your real feelings while letting go of those that hold you back naturally make you feel lighter. Now you're done with your first lesson. We will focus on water manipulation, Issei explained before generating an orb of water. While people underestimate the element of water, but personally water is if not the most dangerous out of all the natural elements that exist in nature. You know why? Issei asked as Sona stood back up while shaking her head. Because water is adaptable. Water is the element of change. Master water users can with enough experience turn water into ice, like your sister, and by opposite use gas, Issei explained as he made the water orb freeze completely before undoing it and changing it into an orb of gas. So you're telling me I'll be able to achieve that level of mastery? Sona asked as Issei nodded. Yes, however there is a current problem, that is your demonic energy reserves. It's average at best, most likely because of your age. But we can fix that. I want you to hold on to this. Issei handed Sona the remaining corpse part, which happened to be one of horns. Sona's eyes immediately could see the sheer amount of demonic energy flowing from the corpse part. That sheer aura she could see with her eyes even surpassed that of her older sister. So much power, Sona thought as she slowly grabbed the horn part with her hands. What do you want me to do with it? Sona asked as Issei chuckled. It will help you increase your demonic energy reserves at a much faster pace. Don't absorb it into your body. The power is too much for you. Also, I don't know what happens if you absorb it. Maybe you'll die or mutate because of it. So don't risk it. I want you to use it by taking a fraction of demonic energy from it and absorbing it into your own body. My body parts are like bottomless energy source, so they don't run out of energy. So each day you take a fraction of demonic energy and add this to your own. This will result in your own demonic reserves growing larger as a result without heavily affecting your own demonic energy. Also, you'll have to do regular meditating exercises to ensure you mentally don't go insane, Issei explained as Sona looked at the corpse part before taking a breath and focusing her aura. She followed Issei's instructions and absorbed a very little bit of energy of the horn into her own body. It wasn't much, but she felt her own reserves growing larger by a little bit. It worked, Sona revealed as Issei nodded. Good, I'll entrust that part to you for the time being. Use it in the spare time, but make sure others don't catch you with it, Issei warned as Sona nodded. Understood, sir. Sona accepted his conditions as Issei explained the other part of her training. Of course, magical training won't be all you're going to be training. Physical training is also a must since if your body is too weak to contain that much power, you simply break down, so I'll be assisting you with gravity-enhanced exercises as well, Issei explained as Sona nodded. Is there any other thing we will be focusing on? Sona asked as Issei thought for a moment. Later we'll move on to more challenging techniques, but for now it's mastering your demonic energy, increasing your demonic energy, mastering water magic, and increasing your physical capabilities. I won't go easy on you. You might die a few times, but I'll bring you back. Don't worry, Issei assured with a savage grin as his eyes glowed crimson. Sona, however, didn't look nervous or scared. She gave him a challenging smirk with her snake eyes glowing violet. Do your worst, she challenged as Issei just grinned back at her. Sona stood in the middle of the training dungeon surrounded by magically moving training dummies that were heading her way armed with swords and spears. Sona, however, didn't look faced as she opened her eyes, showing her snake eyes that showed a battle-hardened face. She effortlessly dodged the sword and spear strikes with elegant grace before generating a ring of water around her body before it fired extremely thin slash of water that sliced the dummies into pieces. From a distance there was another dummy that fired a fire spell towards Sona at high speed. But the high-ranking evil didn't falter as she clasped her hands together. Piercing stream. Water condensed itself within Sona's hands as a thin stream of water shot out her hands at incredible speed that pierced through the fire spell and shot right through the dummy's body, creating a large hole before the dummy fell to the ground. Suddenly another wave of dummies appeared surrounding her as they all started charging towards her. Sona, however, just smirked as she created a magic circle underneath her as the entire room was suddenly filled with water as all the dummies were caught onto the large pool of water. Sona grinned as she clasped her hands together as all the water started gathering with all the dummies were caught in it. Soon all the dummies were caught in the giant water prison as Sona grinned as the ice prison suddenly froze completely. Sona then dropped the giant ice orb onto the ground, shattering it completely with all the dummies with it. Letting out a sigh, Sona wiped the sweat on her forehead as she turned to Issei with a smile. Did I do well? She asked as Issei nodded with a smirk. You did much better than I expected, Issei admitted as he jumped down by her side. I can confidently say you already far surpassed Rias, but you have to train harder, Issei instructed as Sona nodded before bowing. Understood, Lord Issei. Thank you for everything, Sona thanked as Issei just waved her off. No biggie. But question, what are you gonna do with that corpse part? Issei asked as Sona took out the corpse part and thought for a moment. A sudden idea sparked in her as she looked at her master. You don't mind that I experiment with it, right? She asked, making Issei shake his head. So long you don't lose it. You're free to do what you want with it, Issei affirmed as Sona nodded with an evil smile. I think I'll do some research for myself. Sona's smile made Issei smirk. He was indeed right into making her his prized servant. Name Devour. The name Devour comes from Issei's hunger for power manifested in a demonic power. It's demonic by nature and only Issei is known to have this ability. The basics of this ability is when Issei has defeated an enemy, he can by direct touch absorb the target into his body. However, before the target can be fully absorbed, they transform into what Issei calls a life orb. When turned into a life orb, Issei can swallow the orb in his mouth, which starts the devouring process. Absorption. The first step is to absorb the target into Issei's stomach. When absorbed in the stomach, the target is in a state of suspended death. Issei can only absorb others when they are severely weakened to the point can't resist, killed within a certain time, or if the target submits themselves to him, like with Asia, who was fooled into giving her life to Issei. Sacred gear users still maintain their sacred gear when absorbed. Analyzing. When absorbed, Issei can analyze the target body, mind, and soul, which Issei had complete access to. He can obtain every single detail regarding the body, obtain all information from the target, as well read their soul. Deconstruction. After fully analyzing the target, Issei can deconstruct them completely, which will result in their death. However, both the body of the target and the soul are still present in Issei's body as they sealed away in Issei's stomach, which he can use as he desires. Adaptation. After fully deconstructing the target, Issei can adapt himself to the target and become highly resistant against the target's speciality. By adapting to the target's speciality, Issei's attacks become highly more effective against the target. Reconstruction, which is the last stage of Devour, where Issei can change either his body to use that absorbed target's ability as his own or change his appearance to match the target perfectly, including all of their abilities. Also, Issei can reconstruct absorbed targets back to life as his eternal slaves and change them completely to how he sees fit. Issei has complete control of his reconstructed targets. Extra info. While Devour was mainly used on living people, it can also be used on objects and magic itself. However, it isn't usable to absorb incoming attacks, as it can result in internal problems in Issei's stomach. By consuming too many targets at the same time will result in a form of delay within Issei's stomach, as Issei's Devour can also devour one being at a time. Also, depending on how strong the target was, can cause the Devour process to take longer, as gods would take much longer than a human would when devoured. The reason why Issei can't obtain the abilities of sacred gears is the fact when deconstructing the target, which result in their death. The sacred gear system will automatically take the sacred gear away from the deceased host. Even in Issei's stomach, Devour is heavily based of cursed spirit manipulation from JJK and Beelzebub from Tensura. Inside of a cold dusty dungeon was a young man in his mid-20s with dark brown hair laying on the cold stone floor chained to the wall. The young man wasn't alone in the old call he was captured in. The young man wasn't in the best shape. His body was beaten up badly with visible scars and fresh cuts across the entire body, along with an entire eye being gone that was previously stabbed out by the young man's captors. Despite the poor condition, the man was still in some good physical shape with a bit of malnourished. Alongside him were mutilated bodies of women and young children, body parts missing with bones remaining scattered across the dirty floor. The young man let out a small breath as he bit down on the bone as he tore off the flesh-white meat before gulping it down. He let out another sigh as he threw the bone away, which made it clatter around the floor. "There isn't much time left," the young man muttered to himself in the cold as he picked up something beside him. It was the head of someone that looked to be around 67 years old. "Sorry, my son, I even forgot what your name was, but that doesn't matter now." Issei said to his deceased son that he killed the feet off. Issei was forced to do many unspeakable things, which included the murder of his own wives and children because of the hopeless situation. But Issei kept on trying to survive, not caring that he had to kill his wives' children and then eat them to survive. Looking around as there was only some rotten body parts remaining, Issei clenched his teeth as he closed his eyes. He pondered if there was any way to escape. He was stuck with no possible way out. Before he was captured, Issei was the head of the Hayadu clan that ruled a good chunk of land. Issei had a ton of wives, concubines, and children after he became head. But after a sudden attack that he couldn't defend against, Issei and most of his family was captured, which led them to their current situation. Issei stayed quiet as he thought over his options. "It's hopeless, isn't it?" Issei mentally asked himself before trying to get some sleep, but suddenly he remembered the words of a witch he had years ago that spouted about making a deal with the devil of hell. Issei wasn't oblivious to the supernatural world. He knew that they existed since his clan practiced in Shinto magic. He was also certain that the enemy clan that he was captured by made some deal with some entity that gave their men the power to destroy his clan. Looking around, feeling hopeless as he looked at the ground for a moment. "It's either die here powerless and starved, or I can gamble my life for one chance. I've nothing more to lose." Issei made up his mind as he focused the last of his energy. "Hear me, evil spirit that resides in the world of the damned. I, Issei Hayadu, summon you to the mortal world. Take the flesh and of my kin to create the bridge for you to travel to. Come forth," Issei chanted as a magic circle appeared on the ground, while surrounding Issei the bodies of his family started to gather itself towards the magic circle and filled it up completely red. The bodies disappeared as the magic circle was completed and started shining a bright red color. A malicious aura soon erupted that made the entire dungeon start shaking. Soon the gate of the dungeon opened as two guards came rushing down towards his cell. "What's happening?" one guard yelled as he saw what Issei was doing, quickly trying to open the cell. Right when he unlocked it and swung the gate open, a sudden wave of energy erupted that made the two guards completely freeze as time was stopped for. Issei looked up with his one eye as the magic circle started revealing a tall woman with long white hair and two large horns. Two crimson eyes shined as the devil's skin was revealed that appeared to be pale white like the moonlight. "It's been a while I've been on Earth," the devil mused as she wore a tight royal bodysuit that showed her godly curves and massive melons that should break her back for any normal human. The woman looked around before looking down at Issei with a smile. "So you're my summoner, Issei Hayadu, correct?" The devil addressed the young man as she walked over to him and crouched down and placed a hand on his cheek. A white aura surrounded her hand as Issei felt a sudden relief wash over him as his face healed from all his wounds, as even his eye grew back. "That's better. You're more handsome than I expected." Issei didn't know what to say as he eyed the devil, who smiled seductively at him. Lost for words. "You didn't expect such a wise devil like me to appear, right? Well, I'm also surprised. I've never been summoned to the human world myself. It's a first also for me," the woman revealed as she broke off the chains that binded Issei, who slowly stood back up for the first time in months. She healed the remaining injuries as Issei finally was able to stand back again, which revealed that he was still a bit taller than the woman, who was also tall compared to a Japanese woman. "So you're someone important in hell," Issei deduced as he stretched his hands and wrists a bit. The woman giggled as nodded with a sultry smile. "Oops, I gave myself away with that. But to answer your question, yes, I'm a very important person in hell," the devil answered as she inspected Issei. "But more importantly, I call tell you're no ordinary man, Issei Hayadu, sixth son of Gadu Hayadu and last remaining child of all 24 that he had. He became head of your clan around the age of 14 and had 9 wives yourself along with 21 children. You were attacked by an enemy clan that resulted in your capture here, which made you resorting to cannibalizing your own wives and children. Such a brutal and inhumane thing to do. And lastly, you used their bodies to summon a devil as a last resort." The devil summarized his life, which made Issei laugh. "So you're a mind reader as well. I think I summoned the wrong devil." Issei joked as the devil just smiled. "I'm not saying that I'm against it. Trust me, I've killed a ton of my own children for much lesser reasons. It's rare for a human to have a heart of a devil. You don't care about anybody but yourself. You lived your life with only your own desire and killed anybody that stood in your path. Such selfishness is rare. I like that in a man, the devil mused as she came closer and wrapped her arms around Issei's neck while coming close to his ear. Sounds like you're stuck with an incompetent husband. Isn't this your second failed marriage, Lilith? Issei addressed the devil by her actual name, which surprised the devil, who looked up at him. Who did you know? She asked, making Issei chuckle. Lilith wasn't mad or anything, as she was actually more impressed and intrigued by the young man finding out who she truly was. When you said you're a big deal in hell and that you have a ton of kids, wasn't that hard to connect the dots. Also, I'm feeling constantly horny with you so close to me, so you're also a succubus from what I can tell. Despite many Japanese claim denouncing Christianity, I studied a lot about foreign beliefs and religion, so I know most important figures in the Bible, Issei explained as he placed his hands on her back to draw her closer. Lilith didn't object to his touch as she stared into Issei's eyes. Well, that makes things much more easier. But I guess you wish to get rid of this mud hole, she asked, making Issei quiet as he shook his head. No, what I want is more than escaping this place. I want power. Power to fight against anybody that stand in my way, Issei answered as his grasp on Lilith's back slowly sank to her bottom as he possessively grabbed her ass. I get it now. You want to become powerful. Powerful to destroy anything in your way, human or supernatural. That is what you want, right? To become something much greater, Lilith asked as she was getting turned on by the young man that piqued her interest. Yes, I don't care what it takes. I'll do anything for power. I'll destroy anything in my way for power, Issei declared, which made Lilith smirk as she grasped his cheeks and ate him on the mouth. After a hot tongue battle in the middle of the dusty call, Lilith broke the deal as she looked at him with hunger. Good, I can help you with that. Here, Lilith said as from her hand a strange black and red spider lily appeared on her hand that she handed to Issei. This flower will grant you the chance to become more powerful than any other. But in return for this flower I need something, Lilith explained as Issei inspected the flower before nodding. My soul, he asked, making Lilith shake her head. No, there is no point in taking your soul now. What I want is for you to help me in the long future. I can look into the future somewhat, and from what I can tell, I'm going to be in a powerless and vulnerable state. I want you to help me and bring me back. Lilith explained her desire as Issei nodded. If that's all what it takes, then I accept. Issei felt something strange in his heart as Lilith smiled at him. Good, our deal is made now. I have to return to hell. I'll be watching you from their eyes, or maybe a new name would suit better. How about Akuma, she asked. Issei just shrugged. Sure, what suits you, Lilith? Lilith smiled at his answer as she ate him a last time on the lips before she vanished back to hell. Issei was then left alone as he looked at the flower in his hand. Issei brought the flower to his face and opened his mouth before taking the entire flower inside of it and swallowing it. Right on cue, the guards were back moving as the moment he entered the cell he dashed towards Issei and stabbed him with a sword. Issei, however, kept staying on the ground as the guard looked shocked as he saw Issei still breathing. Moments later, Issei lifted his head back up as he looked at the guard with a wicked grin. His eyes were turned into a glaring crimson red with vertical slit pupils. I've moved beyond humanity, Issei declared before lunching his head and opening his mouth before biting through the guard's neck and ripping it off from his body. The other guard looked horrified as Issei just decapitated his fellow guard with his teeth. Issei chewed down on the guard and swallowed the bits of flesh with vigor before crunching down on the skull. The second guard looked like he was about to pass out. But right before he could take another step, Issei stood already before him and grabbed him by the neck before driving his other hand in his skull and ripping out his brain before feasting on it. After eating the second guard, Issei walked free for the first time in months, and he was making sure that nobody but him was walking out of this place alive. After escaping out the dungeon, Issei tore through guard after guard, killing each one with mutilated brutality, leaving nothing but severed body parts scattered across the palace-like building. Issei didn't care as he eventually came across a poor female worker that failed to notice his presence as Issei, without a second of hesitation, grabbed her by her hair and dove his teeth into her neck before eating all of her, leaving as nothing but a rotten corpse on the floor. Issei ate his sharpened teeth before smirking. Women taste much better than men. Well, it suits like I'm gonna feast on this town, Issei sadistically exclaimed before heading to his next victim. A monster has been revealed on Japan that soon will ride forth to become a worldwide calamity. It has been decades after the monster known as Issei Hayaru, or by his nickname Akuma, has been released on Japan. In a matter of a year, Japan went to straight shit. Entire villages and communities were destroyed as Issei laid waste and devoured anybody that was unfortunate to be in his path of power. Humans or supernatural beings, it didn't matter as Issei devoured them one by one. Even his own family that he had left wasn't safe. When Issei returned, he found out that one of his sons became the clan head as they assumed that he died. Issei, however, wasn't happy and slaughtered the remainder of his family in return, which in turn destroyed the Hayaru clan as a whole. After continuously hunting down any form of prey, Issei slowly gained a fearsome reputation, as a desperate clan of weak humans submitted themselves to him in order to earn his favor while in return filling any request he may had. Issei, who saw this as a chance to gain more out of it, accepted it and became the object of worship of the village. In those years, Issei had fought and devoured many powerful opponents, from talented warriors to literal monsters like himself. With each battle he grew stronger and his reputation rose with each day. Now standing on top a large chair made of bones and skulls, a large demonic figure was sitting while holding the head of a poor woman who was given to him as a sacrifice. Issei had changed a lot in those decades, becoming a humongous 5 meters with giant limbs while also growing 2 extra pair of arms. His face has changed a lot as well. His hair grew out to his back while also showing 2 dragonic-like horns along with a giant tail that had a snake on the end. His face also showed his crimson eyes along with 4 smaller eyes above and under his regular eyes along with a giant vertical eye on his forehead. His body didn't look human as it showed large tattoos along with scales and extra mouths that had razor-sharp teeth. But what might be the most scariest part is the extra large mouth he had on his stomach that looked like it could swallow a human whole. It didn't help that the tongue of that mouth was in the bits of flesh between its teeth. Issei boredly chewed down the woman's head before looking at the bowing servant. Next, Issei's cold words shook the servant who nervously looked at Issei's feet. "My lord," the servant tried to get a word out but froze as the man felt a bunch of hands coming from his shadow as a couple of zombies crawled out of his shadow, ready to drag him in. "Speak," Issei ordered without even glancing at him. "We haven't found a suitable sacrifice yet for your taste," the servant explained with a fearful voice as Issei's eyes darted towards him, which made him shiver more. "I see you're the chief of this town, right? Don't you have any women or children that might suit my taste?" Issei asked as the shadowy zombies rose higher and were slowly sinking the man in the shadow. "You have only my personal slave left. What she do?" the man asked, horrified as the zombies were inches away from devouring the chief of the town. "Fine," Issei answered as he commanded the zombies to return back to the shadow. The chief quickly ran and got his maid, who was a green-haired young woman with short hair. She wore ragged clothes and looked to have been through a bad time. "Here she, my lord." The village chief eagerly gave his servant away to spare his own life. Issei nodded in return as suddenly a giant fox head erupted from his side and bit through the village chief in one bite. "This town is starting to bore me," Issei muttered before standing up and slowly walking towards the green-haired girl who looked to be in her late teens. Issei didn't hesitate and lifted her in the air with his giant head that grabbed her head. Issei, however, noticed something strange. The girl in his hand wasn't afraid. She didn't show any emotion apart from perhaps bliss. "What's your name, girl?" Issei asked, making the green-haired girl look confused before softly answering. "Kurumi Tojo, my lord." The girl named Kurumi answered as she closed her eyes awaiting her death. "Aren't you scared to die?" Issei asked as B inspected the girl. The girl shook her head as she didn't dare to make eye contact. "No, my only wish is to serve you, my lord. If my death suits your desire, I'll gladly give you my life," Kurumi stated with absolute loyalty. Issei was genuinely confused as he let go of her head. "You wish to serve me?" Issei's question was answered with a genuine nod, not one out of fear or submission. "It's my dream and desire to serve a higher being like yourself. You alone stand above anyone. It's my life goal to be useful to you in any way possible," Kurumi declared as she looked him in the eyes this time. Issei narrowed all 7 of his eyes and grinned towards her. "Interesting. Very well, girl. If you wish to become useful to me, make myself a meal out of human flesh and make it that it tastes good for me. Use anybody you might think will do in this town and kill them mercilessly. You have 6 hours to create something good or else you will become my next meal," Issei ordered as he sat back down on his throne and rested his head on his fist. Kurumi eagerly nodded and ran off with the determination to succeed her master's expectations. Issei, who actually took a nap, woke up from the smell of something delicious. Opening his eyes, Issei looked up and saw the giant altar that was used to sacrifice his next meals. But this time, it was filled with plates of actually good-looking human meat. Issei stood up and walked over to the altar and inspected the food. Kurumi walked towards the altar with a plate that showcased a woman's head that looked to be cooked along, decorated with herbs and flowers. "My lord, your meal is prepared," Kurumi announced as Issei silently nodded and grabbed the woman's head of Kurumi's plate and ate it in one go. He chewed on the skull and bit through it like nothing, but his eyes soon widened at the delicious taste that was left in his mouth. "It's good," Issei praised as he kept on eating the well-prepared human feast for him until nothing but splatter remained. Kurumi looked ecstatic as her lord enjoyed her cooking to the point he let out a loud burp out of his stomach mouth. Sitting back in his throne, Issei turned to Kurumi, who patiently waited for her master's decision. "You pleasantly surprised me today, Kurumi. In return for such a great meal, I'll reward you by becoming my personal servant for the rest of time. Come here." Kurumi didn't hesitate as she hurriedly walked up to Issei, who pulled her deeper by her waist, making her sit on his lap. Issei then sunk his sharp teeth into her neck and started transferring his into her body. Kurumi let out aloud as her body was filled with power that was slowly devouring her humanity away. After a while, Issei stopped as Kurumi was laying tiredly on his lap, barely conscious. "Thank you, master." Kurumi closed her eyes as she fell asleep as Issei looked at her with an indifferent look before shrugging and letting her rest beside him. Issei made demons through his before, but usually they become mindless slaves that are completely under his control. But Issei made sure that Kurumi's mind wasn't drowned with his power, which would allow her to stay conscious and become a demon with a free will. Well, as free as possible, since she is still bound to Issei. Day and day, Issei's conquest was slowly taking effect on the entirety of Japan. Many supernatural races either waged war against him or fled in desperation, but both options led to them being ruthlessly devoured. Issei's most notable conquest was the purge against the powerful yokai clan of the Nekashu. Issei ruthlessly murdered thousands amongst their kind to obtain their unique abilities. It was no surprise that now their numbers are so low that they are almost considered extinct. Issei, however, didn't care and just enjoyed tormenting those cats for his sick sadistic pleasure. He also devoured the Nine-Tails yokai that was the king of the yokai faction, which resulted in the yokais becoming far more scared of the demon and all fled away in hiding. His name was known across the human world as foreigners of other countries traveled and hoped to defeat the Demon King but were brutally slain in the process. Hell, even the White Dragon Emperor of that era tried to fight him. While he did give Issei an enjoyable fight, it didn't take long for Issei to dismember the arrogant monkeys before eating them whole. Eventually the Shinto gods started to intervene as they tried to eliminate him with a small group of gods who all lost their lives to Issei. Eventually had enough of waiting and decided to god hunting. Standing on top of a mountain with the demon Kurumi by his side, Issei looked up at the clouds and gave a small grin. "It's time," Issei muttered as he readied his weapons in each of his hands. Kurumi nodded before kneeling. "I'll be waiting for your return," Kurumi stated, making Issei nod as he spread his wings and took off to the skies, ready to start his massacre of the heavens. Kurumi looked at her leader with a smile. "Soon he'll stand on top of everybody, the true king of all," Kurumi muttered as she left the mountain. As she came down at the town that Issei ruled over that was now filled with hundreds of monstrous demons, Kurumi raised her hand. "Our Lord will devour the heavens and rise to become the new god of this world. We must show our loyalty by destroying anybody that dares oppose us. Destroy and devour everybody that stand against us," Kurumi commanded as all the demons roared in agreement before scattering and spreading chaos all across Japan, making sure that it will never be the same. In Japan, as thousands of powerful demons started rampaging all over the lands, creating nothing but chaos as clans, territories, and families were torn to shreds. Nothing was spared as men were killed, women were and children were eaten. Chaos was unleashed on the lands as high in the sky a different battle was going on. In the cloudy kingdom of the Shinto heaven, the majority of the kami were preparing themselves for war as they sensed the source of all this chaos heading towards them. At the giant gate that protected them, a sudden demonic figure stood on the other side with his eyes staring right down at the guards. All the gods that witnessed his demonic appearance were frozen at the sight. It was like their greatest nightmare had manifested into reality. Well, all these gods to welcome me. I shouldn't keep you waiting, should I?" Issei asked as his giant hands gripped the gate as a sizzling sound emerged from Issei's hands that were being burned by the pure divine gates. However, Issei just grinned as the burning of his hands didn't bother him. He pushed the gate open with so much force that the gods were pushed back. Trying to stand up, 2 of them were immediately decapitated by Issei, who slashed their heads of their bodies with his clawed hands. A bunch of other gods appeared to lend their aid and fired various amount of Shinto magic and divine spells at the demon. But the demon was too fast for them as Issei with a demonic sword and spear in hands tore through the gods like nothing. A more powerful god tried to sneak him from the sky with his sword and managed to land a cut on Issei's body. But the attack barely left a scratch as the god looked in shock as Issei just smirked and grabbed his body and bit the god's head off while devouring the rest of his body. After eating the god, Issei looked around and saw that there were a ton of more gods waiting for him. Grinning as his lower pair of hands created a hand seal, he muttered, "Emerge from my body, come forth, Kurama." Suddenly from Issei's shadow where started emerging as suddenly a massive 9-tailed fox emerged and let out a massive roar. "Impossible, the 9-tailed fox king Kurama, we heard that he disappeared. But to become a servant of this monster," someone muttered in despair as Issei grinned at them while standing on Kurama's head. "You're wrong, little pests. Kurama isn't my servant. He is part of me and completely loyal to my will. Now destroy them," Issei ordered as Kurama started generating a ton of destructive energy before blasting a massive of energy that completely destroyed a majority of the buildings along with the army of gods that were destroyed along the way. "Whistle, not bad, my little dog. Now, go kill all the rest of these gods that you see. I'll handle the chiefs," Issei ordered as he extended his wings and flew towards the place where the 3 pillar gods were present while Kurama let out a massive roar before trampling anything and anybody that he saw. As Issei was flying and tearing through a few gods and guardians here and there, he was suddenly blasted out of the sky by a thunderbolt. Issei recovered quickly and landed on his feet. Looking at the direction of the attack, Issei saw both Susanoo and Tsukuyomi standing on top of a building armored and ready for battle. "So you dare attack our home, vermin?" Susanoo demanded with anger as Issei just rolled his eyes. "What the does it look like I'm doing, you brain-dead piece of snot?" Issei rhetorically asked before creating a hand sign with his bottom pair of hands. Both gods quickly charged at Issei with their swords and charged at Issei by both sides, but both were stopped by Issei, who blocked them both with his other arms. "Too late," Issei stated as suddenly his stomach mouth opened and grinned. Dragonic technique, elemental calamity. A sudden wave of magic blasted them both back as a barrage of different elemental attack were started being fired from Issei's body towards them. Both gods blocked the majority of the attacks, but both didn't seem to get an opening, allowing Issei to create a new hand sign. Divine technique, ultimate imprisonment. Both gods were suddenly trapped within a golden barrier as Issei grinned maniacally and created 2 new hand signs with his remaining arms. He spoke from both of his mouths. Demonic technique, devouring darkness. Holy technique, calming light. Both Susanoo and Tsukuyomi were shocked as the soothing golden light made them calm instantly and unwillingly made them decrease their divine aura before they were being overwhelmed by a wave of darkness that drained them of their powers. As soon as the darkness was dispelled, both gods fell to their knees at being defeated so easily. Both gods helplessly watched as Issei walked towards them with a massive grin. He snatched Tsukuyomi with his tail and lifted Susanoo with his hand. "Not so divine now, are you?" Issei asked with a hungry grin as he brought Susanoo's face closer and ate it with his demonic tongue. "Curse you, monster!" Susanoo spat with disgust as Issei just grinned. "Don't worry, I'll bring the rest of your family soon in my stomach." "Now goodbye." Issei then opened his mouth and bit through Susanoo's face and started eating the storm god like a piece of meat. Tsukuyomi just helplessly watched as his brother was eaten alive. He was then grabbed by both of his arms by Issei and started pulling on them hard. The moon god's eyes widened in horror as Issei kept pulling on his arms until it felt like they were being ripped off his body. Which they did. Tsukuyomi had any time to scream in pain as Issei ripped of his arms, which made him fall onto the ground. But Issei still had his tail wrapped around his leg and started pulling his body closer. As the stomach mouth ate its razor-sharp teeth, Tsukuyomi tried to struggle but in vain as Issei pulled Tsukuyomi's body towards his stomach mouth that opened its mouth and started chewing on the remains of the moon god's body as Tsukuyomi screamed with tears in his eyes. "Damn, that's good," Issei muttered as he emptied on both of his mouths before turning to the giant temple building where the last of his prey were waiting for him. Without wasting a second later, Issei summoned a bunch of devoured gods and raised his hand towards the temple. "Bring me Amaterasu," Issei ordered as the devoured gods obeyed and stormed the temple to apprehend the leader of the Shinto faction. Issei waited on a pile of corpses from the gods that died today. A few minutes passed as Amaterasu was being dragged to him beaten up and bleeding. "Hello there, sweetie. Glad to see you finally joining us." Issei greeted the sun goddess before standing up and grabbing her by the throat. "Just kill me already," Amaterasu begged as Issei gave a sickening grin. "I think I'll have some fun first before adding you to my collection," Issei whispered before wringing her neck. Amaterasu struggled as Issei ripped off her clothes and gave her a hungry look. "Don't," Amaterasu begged as Issei just kept grinning as he started violating the sun goddess. "Did you pray today?" Issei asked as he started to agree to heal the sun goddess until she lost her will to live and got devoured by Issei soon afterwards. After killing off the sun goddess and leaving the heavens in a state of chaos, Issei made his way to the temple that was much higher in the heavens guarded by the last of his prey. "So you came, Issei Hayao," Izanagi stated as Issei just boredly looked at him. "Damn, you really are a bad husband and father. Leaving your wife in Yomi and letting your daughter to be eaten by me, and you watched it happen. And here I thought I was the bad parent." Issei joked as Izanagi glared at him with his sword and dashed to attack him. But Issei at this point was too powerful for the creator deity as he simply raised his sword and created a hand sign. God-slaying technique, divine departure. Issei sliced the Shinto primordial being head off his body along with the other elderly kamis protecting the door. Issei just smirked as he devoured their bodies before looking at the door before him and opened it, revealing a man and a crystal. "So this is where you're hiding, Amino Minakanashi," Issei muttered as the first Shinto deity simply stared at him with no expression on his face. The crystal broke as Amino Minakanashi floated with a spear in his arms. Issei readied his own weapons as both all-powerful beings started fighting in the highest of heaven. A long and near-endless erupted as both powerhouses fought for months with no rest until Issei started to slowly overpower the first Shinto god and succeeded in weakening enough to devour him. Standing beaten up with a few of his limbs missing, Issei held up the white orb that contained the body and soul of Amino Minakanashi. "Finally, I've conquered the heavens," Issei exclaimed with glee as he opened his mouth and ate the orb in one go. As Issei felt the power course through his body, it didn't last long as he grew even more powerful. However, he suddenly felt a soaring pain in his stomach. Instinctively, Issei opened his stomach mouth and vomited what looked to be a bunch of souls from his stomach that manifested into the gods that he has killed in his rampage. Feeling weakened, Issei could barely stand up as Izanagi stood in front of him with his sword in his hands and was about to slice his body into pieces. But Issei opened his mouth, showing a pair of hands that created one final hand sign. Demonic technique, soul split sealing. Izanagi swiftly sliced Issei's body into pieces as a burst of aura erupted, revealing a corpse and a bunch of weapons laying on the floor. Issei Hayao was defeated and sealed away. Sona Citri was inside of the school she was in charge of, walking in the middle of the hallway in the dead of night, while behind her were a group of boys and girls walking almost zombie-like behind her. Sona guided the group of students to the gym building and made them all stand in the middle of it room. Walking over to the table where Kurumi Tojo was standing, Sona nodded as the maid raised her hand as a green magic circle appeared on the ground. "So how does this work exactly?" Sona asked the green-haired maid who stared stoically ahead. "Each of Master Issei's body parts and weapons contains a good portion of Issei's power and soul. His aura alone can forcefully turn humans into demons," Kurumi explained as Sona took out the body part that Issei gave her. "I get it now. You will fill the entire circle with Master's aura, which in turn will turn these humans into demons." Sona finished as the maid nodded and gestured for the body part. Sona nodded as she placed the part on the ground as a smaller magic circle appeared beneath it, which connected to the larger magic circle with the students in it. "Are you sure it's wise to use students of your school as test subjects?" Kurumi asked. Not that she really cared for humans, but she didn't want to disturb her master with trivial problems. I've already handled it. I've erased all the previous date of all these students, so nobody knows what happened. Sona answered as Kurumi nodded in return. Very well. Observe, Kurumi ordered as she activated the magic circle. Immediately the body part started releasing a tube of demonic energy that traveled from the smaller magic circle to the larger one where all the students were standing. All of a sudden all the students started screaming in pain as their bodies were covered with Issei's aura. Slowly their bodies started to mutate as all of them became more demonic in appearance, growing horns, wings, tails as their skin changed from color. They all changed completely and looked what could be called creatures of the night. Sona had a look of fascination before it turned to boredom. It seems none of them could contain the small portion of Master's power. Sona mused in disappointment. Kurumi just stood still but gave her a raised eyebrow. Were you expecting something else to happen? She asked respectfully as Sona nodded. Yes, I was hoping that some would contain their human appearance just like you, but none was able to. Sona answered, making Kurumi interested. Are you planning to create more demons to serve Master? Kurumi asked, making Sona nod. Yes, I've come to think that having an army of skilled and conscious demons would be more suited than just mindless beasts. Sona replied. Kurumi nodded before looking at the demons before speaking. Well, it doesn't happen often, but there were a few demons like me that were born in the Dark Night period. They weren't loyal to Master but originated from the sheer demonic energy that he released on the land. It caused mindless demons like these in front of us to be born, and even some demons that take a human appearance and have an actual consciousness. They are rare, but I remember a few who were quite powerful. Of course, they were no match for Master Issei. Kurumi revealed, surprising Sona. There were other demons like you, but how come that they aren't loyal to Master? Kurumi raised her hand to her chin and thought. Perhaps I'm different than them. I was the only demon turned by Master. The others that I've met were naturally born from the demonic energy that ran across Japan because of Master's immense aura. That's why they weren't loyal to Master. Well, some were loyal as they saw Master Issei as their god, while others wanted to defeat and claim the throne as strongest for themselves. Kurumi answered as she recalled her past encounters with human-like demons that were indeed powerful in their own rights. But in the end, they were maggots compared to her master. I see. If there was a way to create demons with a conscience like you without them losing loyalty, that would be the greatest way to increase our forces in a short time. Sona theorized as Kurumi nodded but kept her expression neutral. You speak like you are the one calling the shots. Don't forget that you and I are nothing but tools for Master. We serve no purpose other than being useful to him. We don't plan ahead which path Master must take. We will choose that path himself. Don't forget that. Kurumi warned with a serious look as Sona nodded. I won't forget. I'm not planning against Master or trying to act as an advisor, but I'm just trying to get most out of our chances. Sona assured as Kurumi nodded. Good, but I don't have an answer to that problem. I studied demons and how they came to existence, but I never learned how human-shaped demons were born. I assumed that they were simply a rare occurrence. Kurumi answered as a new voice spoke to them which surprised them both. Well, you were right on the last part, Kurumi. Issei appeared in the gym while aiming around his lips. Both girls immediately went on their knees for their master as Issei gestured for them to stand. Rise. And Sona, the answer to your question why those ants turned into mindless demons is that they were simply overloaded with demonic energy. You see, anybody can become a demon or devil when they take in demonic energy into their body and let it merge with their soul. Issei revealed, surprising both girls as Issei walked over to one of the female demons and pressed his hand on her. You mean they can regain their consciousness after transforming? Sona asked as Issei shrugged. It depends on the will of the human. But yes, for example, when you turn these humans into demons, they were overloaded with demonic energy with no way of controlling it. The sheer amount affected their soul, but also the mind, as both are needed to manipulate demonic energy. Issei explained as his aura surrounded the female demon before her body seemed to turn back to human as she was naked on the floor looking at Issei with a lustful look on her face. That means, for one to be able to become a demon, they need to absorb demonic energy bit by bit to allow their soul to adapt to it and learn to control their demonic energy to prevent mutating and losing control. Kurumi theorized as Issei nodded before he lifted the girl up her feet before biting face off with his razor-sharp teeth and chewing on it like it was some piece of meat, which it technically is. Yup, like with this girl, I controlled her demonic energy so her soul was able to handle it, but her mind was already broken from the sheer amount. So if you want to create loyal demons, do that ritual again, but do it bit by bit, Issei advised as he finished eating the female demon. Oh yes, Sona. Yes, my lord, Sona replied as Issei grinned at her. I've changed my plans. I think I'm going to use Kyo to create a base of some sorts. The Shinto gods are livid and are currently occupied with destroying the demons that are rampaging all over Japan. So now is a good time to make preparations for my next conquest, Issei explained, making the raven-haired devil look at him with interest. And what do you wish to do, Master? Sona asked as Issei grinned. Simple. I want you to create an army of all people of this school. However, you are in charge of creating the army of mindless but loyal demons. I'm going to be busy creating the more powerful demons, Issei answered, making Kurumi confused. My apologies for questioning you, Master, but I was under the impression that you lost the ability to create more demons. Kurumi questioned as Issei nodded. I thought so as well, but after I regained more of my power back, I regained some of demonic abilities back, with one being able to turn others into demons with my. It isn't on the same level as before, but enough to create more powerful demons compared to these mindless idiots. Issei pointed at the horde of demons that went on their knees when Issei merely turned to their direction. Kurumi nodded as she didn't doubt her master one bit. But Sona had one question. But what about the Gremory peerage in mind? Sona asked as Issei just grinned. Simple. Capture them, torture them, and I'll then them into loyal demons myself. Issei answered as it was obvious. Sona couldn't help but grin as the thought of finally showing her superiority towards Rias. It will be done tonight, master, Sona vowed as Issei nodded with a smirk. Good. Also Kurumi, I need you to prepare something for me, Issei ordered as Kurumi bowed. Your wish is my command, master, Kurumi replied as Issei nodded. Good. You will be busy with this task for a while, so begin with it now. Issei then explained something to Kurumi as Sona listened on, but her face turned nearly purple of what she just heard. That's disturbing, Sona muttered as Issei just shrugged his shoulders. Trust me, I've done worse. Anyway, both of you have a task at hand. Now get to it, Issei ordered before disappearing as both women were going to finish their own task at hand. As the night came by, Ria's Gremory and her peerage were called by a sudden meeting called by Sona to meet at the gym of the school. Rias was surprised but agreed as she along with her peerage entered the gymnasium of the school and saw the entire Citri peerage. Tsubaki, where's Sona? Rias asked as the queen of Sona Citri shook her head. I don't know. I just got this call from her to bring our peerage to the gymnasium, Tsubaki replied as she narrowed her eyes. Somebody is here, Kaneko warned as suddenly a barrier around the gymnasium was erected as everybody was on high alert. Looks like you are all here. Everybody turned to the door and saw Sona Citri along with Kalawarna and Asia next to her. Sona, what's going on? Rias asked as Sona just gave her a scoff. Simple. It is time for you all to become useful to our master, Sona replied before raising her aura, which surprised them all as it was much higher than before. It made Rias and Akinos combined look like nothing. President Tsubaki tried to get her attention as Sona just ignored her and turned to the other girls. Kalawarna, you'll handle my peerage. Don't kill anybody since we can turn them into demons. Same goes to you, Asia. You'll handle the Gremory peerage. I'll handle Rias, Akino and my queen, Sona stated as both girls nodded. Understood. Both girls grinned evilly as they raised their auras as well. All the others got into a fighting state as Sona was first to attack by firing 2 blasts of water at the group, which turned out to divide them into 3 sections. Sona then raised her hand, which made that was laying on the ground blast up to the ceiling, creating 2 walls of water in between them with each girl in a different section. Let's get them, Sona exclaimed as she turned to her 3 opponents. As Kalawarna turned to the Citri peerage, she created 2 spears of light in her hands as she grinned at the weak peerage. So this is all you got? This won't be difficult, Kalawarna casually taunted as Saji prepared his sacred gear and fired a tentacle at her, but she easily blocked it before glaring at the blonde man. Nobody but my master can touch me, worm, learn your place. Kalawarna then fired her light spears at Saji, who couldn't defend himself as a white-haired girl stood in front of him and created a magic circle. Saji, the white-haired girl, yelled as she tried to block the light spears, but her defensive barrier wasn't strong enough as they pierced through it and exploded right in her face. Momo, Saji yelled but was cut off as Kalawarna appeared right in front of him and delivered a painful kick to his crotch that knocked the air out of Saji's lungs as he fell down on the ground holding his bleeding, crushed genitalia. Kalawarna turned to the rest of the peerage and just grinned before snapping her fingers as magic circles appeared underneath them before it blasted them with holy energy, but not enough to kill them, which resulted in all of them fainting of the sheer pain. That was easy, Kalawarna said to herself as she started picking up the unconscious peerage before collecting the peerage members and waiting for the others to finish their fight. As the water walls blocked them off, Asia turned to her 2 opponents, which were Kiba and Kaneko. Asia wasn't worried as she was certain she could handle them without much effort. Asia was surprisingly stronger than Kalawarna but a bit weaker than Sona. Kiba, who prepared a demonic sword, looked at the crazed priestess with a narrowed look. I've heard of you. Asia Argento, right, exiled nun of the church. What are you doing with that fallen angel? Kiba asked as Kaneko prepared her gloves. Asia just smiled before summoning her sacred gear. None of your business, little child. But it looks like you are the one having sinned badly, Isaiah, Asia replied, shocking Kiba, who couldn't believe that this nun knew his true name. How do you know that name? Kiba growled as Asia just kept smiling. Come and find out. Kiba immediately charged at her, but his sword strike was blocked by a magical barrier by Asia, who then pushed him back far and fired 2 fire blasts in the form of skulls. Kiba tried to block the attacks but was burned a bit. Kaneko quickly tried to close her distance between them and punched Asia in the face. But her punch didn't connect as Asia created a thin magical wall in front of her face to block the impact before sending Kaneko with a wave of wind magic. Becoming a bit impatient, Asia gathered her magic as she suddenly summoned a bunch of souls that she had stored in her sacred gear and fired them in a concentrated blast towards the pair, but aimed in between them so both were separated. Using this chance, Asia closed the distance between her and Kiba and pressed her hand on his before filling his body with lighting magic that made him fall unconscious on the ground. Kaneko, who watched her ally be defeated so easily, became scared as Asia just turned to her and grinned before sending a small blast of energy that completely engulfed her body and holy energy that knocked the cat girl out. dusting off her clothes. Asia grinned as she grabbed both defeated peerage members with magic and waited for Sona to finish her battle. As the water walls were formed, Sona turned to her former friends. Sona, what are you doing? Riaz asked as Sona just sighed. Why should I bother explaining when we are going to fight? Sona replied before raising her hand and firing a water blast at them, which made them all releasing their wings and take to the sky. Sona followed as she lifted herself up and fired 2 more blasts of water at them, which made Riaz and Akino block it with their defensive magic. But both were surprised at the sheer strength the attack had and were pushed back when their barrier broke soon afterwards. Tsubaki looked at her master and narrowed her eyes. They must have mind-controlled her. Tsubaki flew forwards as Sona planned to fire another attack again and was shocked that Tsubaki suddenly embraced her and pressed her hand on the back of her head. Sona, please make up. Tsubaki tried to reach for Sona in her head as Sona's head was engulfed with magic. As soon afterwards Sona's head fell down as Tsubaki released her hand from her head. Tsubaki tried to call out to her master as she released the hug. Sona looked back up with her violet eyes showing tears as Tsubaki was about to cry too. But, thud, Tsubaki looked shocked as her eyes looked down, showing Sona, who had driven her fist into Tsubaki's stomach, as the queen looked on with betrayal as Sona's eyes revealed the snake-like eyes with a sadistic grin on her face. Stupid girl, Sona whispered before spinning around and delivering a powerful spin kick to Tsubaki's face, which knocked the queen out cold. Tsubaki, Riaz yelled out as she glared at her friend. How could you do that to your own queen? Riaz demanded before generating a ton of her power of destruction and firing it at Sona, but she just grinned and fired a blast of water that took the shape of a serpent that connected with Riaz's attack, but to no one's surprise, Riaz's attack was easily overpowered by Sona's as both Gremory devils had to dodge the incoming attack. Sona just smirked as she gracefully descended back on the wet floor. She's nothing more than an asset to me now. So will you be soon enough? Sona replied as Akino glared at her. Then I don't have any doubt to attack you. Thunderbolt. Akino fired a lighting attack from a magic circle to Sona, which connected along with the wet floor, which caused Sona to become affected with the lighting attack. But as Sona was electrocuted, they heard Sona laugh with delight. Aha, you really think this will stop me? Quote amusing. Hey Akino, you are a masochist right here, you'll enjoy this. Sona raised her hand as the water walls surrounding them both suddenly warped into a giant barrier around the three as Sona grinned before bringing her hands together as from multiple directions came waves of water that encased Akino in a giant water bubble. Akino Riaz tried to free her friend who was imprisoned in water by firing a blast of destructive energy at Sona, but that proved to be a bit mistake as Sona simply caught the destructive blast and smirked at Riaz's foolishness. You've fallen right into my trap, Sona exclaimed as she manipulated the destructive energy from Riaz's attack and somehow combined it with her own water magic before firing a sphere of destructive water at the water bubble where Akino was stuck in. As the moment it made contact, Akino was bombarded with destructive energy as the bubble exploded, with Akino falling out of it with her clothes missing and heavily damaged. Akino Riaz tried to catch her queen, but that was her second mistake, as before she could reach Akino, Sona had already grabbed her by her foot and swung her up in the air before flying up and kicking her right in the gut, which made Riaz cough up some. But Sona wasn't done. As Riaz struggled in the air, Sona grabbed her by her crimson hair and gave a powerful punch right to her face, which left a giant bruise along with a broken jaw. Sona, however, was relentless as she punched her a couple of times again before punching her so hard that she was sent back to the ground. As Riaz was laying on the floor in pain, she tried to crawl for help, but Sona suddenly landed on her back, which made her cry out in pain. PP, please, Sona asked. Stop this, Riaz begged as tears rolled out from her bruised face as her eyes were swollen and black and she had a bunch of her teeth missing. But Sona couldn't care less as she dispelled the water barrier as both Asia and Calawarna walked up to the defeated Gremory heiress. That was faster than expected, Calawarna said as she turned to Riaz while giving her a side eye. Asia giggled as she looked at Riaz with a giant grin on her face. The evil priestess raised her hand and healed Riaz in a matter of seconds, as the trio of girls started to relentlessly jump Riaz with physical and magical abuse, which they did for a good hour before deciding that they had enough and let their master. Issei was in the abandoned building alone as he stood by the altar where he transformed Asia into a demon. He was pressing his hands together as before him was a magic circle that was glowing. O death, become my partner once more. I, who devoured the heavens, give you 1,000 souls for the one I desire. Bring me Giselle Jewel. Around Issei's body a suddenly storm of what looked to be human souls started flying out of his body into the magic circle as all the souls from 1,000 humans started gathering into it. As soon it transformed into one single life orb. Grinning at the success of his spell, Issei took the life orb and gave it a before downing it completely. Time to be born again in this era, Jiggy. Issei grinned before closing his eyes as a sudden body started coming out of his hand, revealing a young woman with black hair, a rather slim build. The woman laid on the floor for a moment before her eyes opened, revealing a pair of dark blue as she blinked in surprise. Good evening, Jiggy. Welcome back to the land of the living. Issei greeted the black-haired girl, who looked shocked at seeing the young man again before bowing her head. Welcome back to the world of the living, Jiggy. Issei greeted the black-haired demon, who gave a droopy smile while sitting up and giving him a bow. It's an honor that you brought me back to serve you, my lord, Giselle replied before noticing something rather important. If I may ask, where's my penis? Issei gave a grin before shrugging. I kind of forgot you were a boy back then. You did a good job as acting as a girl, so I assumed you wanted to be an actual girl yourself. Are you not happy with that? Issei asked as Giselle shook her head practically. Not at all, my lord, Giselle answered before smiling again. I'm just grateful that you gave me this chance to perhaps serve in bed, Giselle suggested as Issei just grinned before lifting her up from the ground with one hand and started making out with the now female demon. I don't care if you were a boy or girl. I would have ed you if I wanted to, Issei muttered as they made out but were stopped as a magic circle appeared behind him as Sona along with Calawarna and Asia appeared. My lord, it's done, Sona informed while failing to notice the new female Issei was making out with. Issei disconnected the before stepping aside, allowing the trio to meet their new ally. Good, perhaps timing as well. This is Giselle Jewel, a demon of the Dark Age era. She's now part of the team. Issei introduced the girl who lazily waved her hand at them. Hello, I'm Giselle, but call me Jiggy for short. Giselle introduced herself as Issei looked at Sona. You see, my only worry was the loss of sacred gear users. That's why I was hunting humans for a bit until I had enough to bring Jiggy back. Her power is called Zombie, and as it is named, she can create zombies with a mere drop of her. When turned into zombies, if the victim happens to be a sacred gear user that hasn't died yet, that user will turn into a zombie under Jiggy's control without losing their sacred gear. Issei explained in short as the trio looked on in interest as Giselle giggled. I see. That means I can add as many sacred gears users to my collection, right? Jiggy asked, making Issei nod. Anybody really, so long it isn't someone I'm after. I'm okay with it, Issei agreed, making Jiggy let out a lazy cheer. Great. Turning back to Sona, Issei walked over to her. So what are you going to do with your peerage? Issei asked as Sona chuckled before pulling out the demonic relic. I'm turning them into demons. I'm gonna follow your advice and make them into demons with a conscience, Sona answered as Issei nodded. Good. However, give that sacred gear boy to Jiggy. She could make better use of it along with the night brat. The entire Gremory peerage I want for myself, Issei ordered as the four girls obeyed. Understood, Master. Issei turned to Sona. Yes, Ria's Gremory has a sealed bishop in her clubhouse. He is a half-vampire with the power to stop time, but he can't control his sacred gear, Sona informed as Issei raised an eyebrow before thinking. Capture him and bring him to me later when I'm done with the girls. Do what you want with him in the meantime. And to break his spirit, I don't care, Issei casually replied before vanishing away, leaving the girls to themselves as they all giggled evilly. Inside of a cell, Saji Genshiro and Yuudo Kiba were imprisoned in a cell together as both young men were stripped naked while chained to the ground. Both young men heard the sound of humming heading towards them as Giselle appeared by the cell gate, now wearing some clothes, and smiled droopily at them. However, her eyes showed a greater evil within. Hello there, boys. Giselle opened the cell gate and walked inside. She had her lips as she looked at her toys as she pulled out a toolkit from her storage space and took out a bunch of needles, a razor-sharp knife, a tweezer, and lastly a bottle of some sort. Stay away, Saji tried to struggle, but he was still too exhausted from his utter defeat that Giselle just giggled and pulled him closer by the ankle before taking her tweezers and slowly started pulling on Saji's big toe, which made the boy scream out in pure agony. A GGHHH oof. Saji was cut off as Giselle forcefully pushed a rag in his mouth and froze his mouth so he couldn't spit it out. So noisy, she muttered as Saji tried to struggle by kicking her, but she summoned a pair of chains that kept Saji's limbs attached to the floor so he couldn't move much anymore, much to his agony. Saji kept screaming in the rug as Giselle proceeded to pull off his big toenail, which made splatter on the ground much to the girl's fascination. So pretty, Giselle muttered as she did the same for Saji's other toes, leaving one foot without any toenails, which made the poor boy struggle in total agony. However, Giselle wasn't done by any means as she did the same for Saji's other foot, leaving him with none of his toenails anymore as the blonde could do nothing but struggle in vain as his body was being toyed with. Giselle giggled while rubbing her in delight as Saji kept screaming in pain. Giselle smiled at him as she took out the small knife and started gently slicing into Saji's legs, using the knife to literally draw into his body like a canvas. Humming a tune as Saji's body legs were covered in literal drawings made of cuts. They were deep that started to leak out of all the cuts as Saji just gave up and hoped for it to end so soon. Now that's a better look, Giselle exclaimed before turning to Saji's prized possession, which was healed by Asia before he was thrown into the dungeon. Giselle grinned as she slowly picked the smaller than average sized rod with her fingers and gently did it. You know, I was actually a man before I was brought back by Master, but I always felt more feminine for some reason, so I pretended to be a girl. But now that I'm one, I wanted to feel what's like to have my ravaged by it, but yours won't give me that satisfaction. A shame, really. My back then was even bigger than this. But at least I will allow you to ejaculate before turning you. You'll like that, Giselle asked, but Saji shook his head with a glare. Giselle took offense to that. I see, you won't even appreciate such kindness from me. Then you don't deserve it. Giselle then pulled out her knife and quite literally sliced off half of Saji's off, which made the boy struggle again in absolute pain. Ha, it's even smaller than before. Well, you deserve it for not thanking me for showing such mercy. Giselle then grabbed Saji by his S and squeezed them so hard that they literally crushed like GS in her grip. Saji could do nothing as he fainted from the pain as Giselle giggled while aiming from her hand. "Oh dear, I went a bit too hard on him," Giselle muttered before biting the tip of her finger and letting some fall on Saji's body as it quickly turned red as Saji began to growl as he slowly rose up as he was turned into a zombie. Kiba, who wisely kept quiet this entire time, looked on in horror as Saji was released from his chains and rose up before looking at him with hunger. "Nah, no eating until I say so." Giselle kicked Saji to the wall, which made him fall on the ground unresponsive. Giselle then turned to the knight as her eyes sparkled with glee. "Such a cute you are, what to do, Giselle asked herself while walking over to him and pulling out her knife again. Kiba just closed his eyes accepting his death, but before he felt anything, a shift in the air occurred as Giselle stopped and looked down at him. "What, giving up on life already? That's boring." "Well, easy, but boring. You're boring like all these little humans died at the hands of that holy sword." Giselle's words stung Kiba, who looked on in pure rage as the black-haired girl smiled at him. "I'm not a sadist like them. All these poor children, giving false promises to become soldiers of God, only to be disposed of when they weren't fit anymore. Such betrayal, such despair. Oh, I would have gladly taken all these children and killed them all myself." Giselle's words were boiling Kiba's, who had somehow broke free from the chain and created a demonic sword and plunged it in Giselle's, which caused to spurt out of her body onto Kiba's skin. "Die!" Kiba yelled while pushing the sword deeper in Giselle's body, who just giggled at him. "Foolish little boy." Her words made Kiba realize that he ate up as in an instant his skin turned dark red as his eyes lost the life in his body. "Now, for daring to wound me, you must be punished. So cut off your..." Kiba's body moved on its own as Kiba made a smaller blade and in a swift motion cut off his own and S that fell on the ground. Giselle giggled as she brought the bottle she pulled out and poured some on Kiba's crotch that was lacking the NS part. The wound closed up but didn't heal the messing genitalia as Giselle walked over to Saji and did the same. "Now boys, come with me," both zombies groaned as they stood back up and followed Giselle out of the prison as their lives has literally turned to hell. Slowly opening her eyes, Ria's Gremory found herself laying on the cold floor inside of a dark dungeon with no source of light except for the dim light that shined through the bottom of the door. Lifting her head off the ground, Ria's tried to stand up, but her feet were too weak to carry her weight as she fell back onto the floor before letting out a groan of pain. "What's happening?" Ria's asked to herself as the memories of what transpired resurfaced back to her, making her grit her teeth in hatred. "Curse you, Sona," Ria's muttered to herself. "But speak of the devil and she will appear," as the door of the dungeon opened, revealing Sona Citri wearing a pair of dark blue lingerie while smiling deviously towards Rias. "Morning, Rias. Did you have a good nap?" Sona asked while walking towards the defeated crimson-haired princess who glared murderously towards her. What have you done to me?" Rias demanded, but was answered with a swift kick to her head which nearly snapped her head back. "Silent, you worm," Sona hissed before grabbing Rias by her crimson hair and started pulling her out. "We're heading towards Master, so shut your mouth before I break your chin," Sona warned as she dragged Rias all the way from the dungeon to the room where Issei was. Sona didn't care that she slung Rias over a bunch of stairs like a bag of potatoes. Eventually they arrived at the room where Issei was sitting on a throne with Giselle crouching by his knee, laying her head on his thigh and letting Issei pet her like a dog. Giselle was pretty much drooling at being treated like this by her master, while Issei was amused at seeing Sona drag Rias from the dungeon and threw her towards the middle of the room. "Well, that's certainly a dramatic entrance," Issei jokingly remarked as his hand stopped petting Giselle, who pouted but turned to Rias with her usual droopy smile. "I knew you were behind this. What did you do to my family?" Rias yelled and tried to move, but her body was suddenly pushed back to the floor as it felt like a massive amount of weight was suddenly added to her body. "No need to be angry, Jiggy." Issei looked down at the zombie while petting her head again, who smiled back to her master as she released her killing intent. "Sorry, master, it's just I can't stand to hear such a pathetic piece of flesh raise their voice at you," Giselle explained, making Issei chuckle as he gestured for her to stand up. "It's all right." Issei turned back to Rias before grinning. "All right, your family, well, if you want I can bring them here," Issei suggested as Rias glared at him. "Where are they?" Rias demanded as both Sona and Giselle glared back at Rias, but Issei mentally stopped them. "They are right here." Issei snapped his fingers as another door opened, revealing the zombie-turned-Kiba, who walked in the room wearing a strange knight armor. "Kiba," Rias asked, but the zombie just let out a groan as Giselle commanded the zombie to walk towards her before she kicked Kiba all the way across the room. "Kiba, he's pretty much gone, princess. Your little knight has been added to my collection," Giselle informed, making Rias glare harshly at the zombie, who kept her droopy smile on her face, but behind it she carried a ton of sadistic intent. "Well, that's only the knight. Your rook and queen, well, you can see for yourself." Issei snapped his fingers again as the door opened, revealing both Asia and Calawarna, with both Kaneko and Akino crawling on their hands and knees naked with a leash around their necks. They both carried a head-stupid smile as their bodies were covered in whip and slash marks. "What did you do to them?" Rias yelled in rage as she, with all of her remaining strength, tried to fire a destructive sphere at Issei, who calmly watched as the sphere got closer, but was blocked by none other than Akino, who created a defensive magic circle. "Akino," Issei chuckled as he stood up and grasped both of Akino's S and played with them in the open. "You see, both your rook and queen were very loyal to you. But the thing is, the more they cling on to that loyalty, the harder they will fall when their will are broken. It didn't take long as both girls were already quite traumatized, which helped me a lot in breaking them into the good girls they are now." Like this. Issei snapped his finger again as Ria's eyes widened as Kaneko delivered a powerful punch into her stomach which made Ria's puke on the floor as she clung onto her stomach. Now that you realize that you are at my mercy, let me explain what's going to happen to your little family, Issei said as he brought both Akino and Kaneko where Ria's was and made them both sit beside her. Ria's weakly looked up as Issei looked at her with a savage grin. What do you want from us? Ria's weakly asked as Issei just shrugged. Nothing really. It's just fun toying with people that think that they are in charge. You may be the sister of Lucifer, but it will be too late for him to save you now, Issei answered before stroking his chin. But for now I'm gonna use your family to bring back a few of my old acquaintances. Don't worry, you three won't be gone forever, since I still will be needing you three for another job. But your bodies, however, are needed for now. So be a good girl and open your mouth. As Issei uttered these words, all three opened their mouth against their will or willingly. Jiggy, go ahead. Giselle giggled as she walked over each girl and placed a small cherry shaped into their mouths. They were mostly black and red in color, except each one gave off a different feeling. After placing the S into their mouth, Giselle closed their mouths with her hand before giggling. It's done, master, she informed as she strutted beside Issei. Swallow. All three girls gulped the odd object as Issei grinned at them. Seeing that you won't be in around for a bit. Any last words? Issei asked as Riaz looked at Issei with nothing but hatred in her eyes. Die in hell, Issei just grinned wider before outright laughing at her face. Don't worry, I'll be visiting there really soon to take the throne from your big brother. Now good night, Riaz Gremory, you'll make up next time in my new world. Issei replied as he stepped back and created a hand sign. Demonic technique body sacrifice. All three girls' eyes widened as their bodies were immediately covered in a dark red aura as all three of them started screaming in pain as their bodies shower various demonic markings before their skin burned, as it was literally burning off their flesh before completely burning off, leaving nothing but their bones. However, soon the bodies of nothing but bones started regenerating their flesh and skin, but when their bodies started to fully form, it took the shape of three different girls. A pink-haired girl that laid where Kaneko was, a black-haired girl that laid where Riaz was, and lastly a blonde that where Akino laid. When their bodies were fully regenerated, the aura was still surrounding their lifeless bodies as Issei walked over before raising his hand as he pulled the all three souls of the girls' bodies, which turned into life orbs, before pocketing them away. Now to bring their girls back, Issei muttered as he created another hand seal. Unlike how he brought back Giselle, Issei had to sacrifice 1,000 souls to get Giselle's soul in return from the afterlife. But Issei didn't have that many souls left, so he decided to use something he hasn't done before, which was possible thanks divine technique, pure world reincarnation. As Issei muttered those words, his own black and red aura flared for a bit as from his own aura three small white spheres of energy started forming before each sphere hovered over each of the girls' body before descending down and merging with the bodies. All three bodies glowed for a bit as slowly all three girls opened their eyes. As they all sat up and looked confused. What happened? All three girls asked at the same time as Issei looked at them with a grin. It has been a while, Minnie, Bambi and Candy. They all turned to Issei as they all took a moment to realize who they were facing, as they immediately looked on with admiration from Minnie, fear from Bambi, and lust from Candy before bowing with their heads low touching the ground. It's an honor to see you again, my lord, all three saluted in unison as Issei couldn't help but take in their naked bodies. Issei stopped for a moment as he realized that he had become far more perverted than he used to be. Not that he wasn't perverted back in the Dark Age era, but his perversion somehow became stronger when taking over his own descendant's body. For a pathetic brat, his perversion is so strong it affected even me, Issei thought before shaking his head, removing the thought from his brain. Giselle giggled as she walked forward. Oh, how cute to see you three finally showing Master the respect he deserves, Giselle said, making all three look up at the zombie as the three girls had all mixed reactions. Jiggy, so you're the reason why we are back, Bambi yelled in anger as her aura rose, but quickly it stopped when Bambi noticed Issei raising his eyebrow, which scared the girl. So his coming back to life was Lord Akuma's plan. I guess we are enslaved to him now, Candy said as she signed in defeat. Issei just chuckled as he turned to Minnie, who was still looking at Issei with an admirable look. That's no problem for me, Minnie added as Issei just shrugged before walking back to his throne and sitting on it. All the girls, including Sona, Asia, and Calawarna, all kneeled down before Issei, who rested his head on his fist before smiling. As the rest of you can see, there are 3 new warriors amongst your ranks. Stand up and introduce yourself, Issei ordered as Bambi was the first to stand up before turning to the rest. My name is Bambietta Basterbine. I was known as the Explosion Demon a long time ago. Bambi, or Bambietta, introduced herself as she looked around the room as all girls nodded before she kneeled back down as Meni was the next one to stand up. I'm Meninus McAllen, but please call me Meni. I'm the power demon from the era Lord Akuma reigned. Meni introduced herself before looking at Issei before bowing deeply. I'm humbly honored that you have brought me back to serve you, my lord. Meni then kneeled back down as Issei just grinned in return. Lastly, Candy stood up before giving a wide smirk. I'm Candace Catnip, the Thunderbolt Demon. Pleasure to meet you. Candy gave a more friendly introduction before kneeling down as well. Issei recalled that despite these girls being close friends with Giselle back in the Dark Age era, only Giselle was a willingly loyal demon to Issei. It is why only she knew his real name, while the other 3 referred to him as Akuma. While the girls weren't disloyal to him back then, It was more of them becoming a close group at the time Issei conquered Japan, as they respected Issei but didn't worship him. But now that they were brought back to life by him, they had no choice to serve him. Standing up, Issei grinned. Good to see you three understanding your situation. I'll explain our plans soon. But for now, let's just say that we are going to unleash hell onto the entire world. And also, seeing that you three are loyal to me now, refer to me as Issei Hayato, which is my real name. Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.